Chapter 998. They had a very nice name in ancient times, the Four Spirits of Heaven. The so-called Four Spirits of Heaven were also known as the Four Divine Beasts. They were Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. Today's demon realm was ruled by Xianyuan Palace, but strictly speaking, Xianyuan Palace wasn't part of the demon realm. Therefore, in the orthodox demon realm, the bloodline of the Four Spirits of Heaven was the one that could become a superior race. Momo saw the representatives of the Demon Association, who were 4 seats in front of the Greedy Wolf Clan's Purple Star Young Master. Azure Dragon Clan's Patriarch Songjin Shui, White Tiger Clan's Young Master Huang Baifu, Vermilion Bird Clan's Priest Chu Xinghe, and Black Tortoise Clan's Patriarch Ming Tushan. Even if it was hidden, Momo could feel the enormous demon power that seemed to have condensed into a solid entity in the air. He heard that there was also a powerful demon clan in Xianyuan Palace, but he didn't know how the representative of the Four Spirits of Heaven was compared to him. There were a total of 6 seats from the Demon Association. In addition to the 4 clans and Greedy Wolf Clan, the last seat was occupied by a haggard man in black with a face as pale as ash. Momo found that the other party's gaze had been fixed on him. He couldn't see any hostility, but it made him feel strange. He couldn't help glancing at the other party's nameplate. The Fengdu City's city lord was silent. The city lord of the Ghost Clan? Momo frowned secretly, suddenly understanding why the city lord of Fengdu City looked at him with such a strange gaze. Strictly speaking, the Dragon Tiger Mountain's Heavenly Master was probably the most hostile existence in Fengdu Ghost City. The Dragon Tiger Mountain's Heavenly Master traveled through time, sweeping away all kinds of demons and monsters. He probably had a lot of enemies in Ghost City. Lai Kaixing looked at the clerk, Miss Gong. She nodded and stood up. She was holding a box in her hand. After opening it, one could see that there were 3 bottles inside. The bottles were filled with some dark blue liquid. "This is Heaven's Tear," Miss Gong said indifferently. "We got it in Yunnan recently. Michael Club seems to be selling it as a new type of drug. However, it's usually diluted. Heaven's Tear is used as a transaction item. These 3 are the real Heaven's Tears. They were found in this transaction." After pausing for a moment, Miss Gong said seriously, "Also, according to the information from the Land Management Bureau of Special Countries, the person who secretly controls this transaction in our country is called Mr. Sunday. I'm afraid he's an important member of the Michael Club. If you have any news about this person in the future, please inform us." At this moment, the young master of the White Tiger race, Huang Baifu, yawned and said indifferently, "Maintaining world peace is not something that beasts like us do. I'm only interested in this so-called Heavenly Tear." "Cut the crap, didn't you say you wanted to test the power of this thing on the spot? If you continue to blabber on, I'm going to fall asleep." Miss Gong glanced at Lai Kaixing beside her. Seeing him nod slightly, she said indifferently, "Since young Master Huang is so impatient, then let us begin. Let us ask the Demon Association to send out their candidate." However, Huang Baifu stood up and stretched his neck, saying, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. Let me do the stretching." "Young Master Huang." Miss Gong frowned and wanted to say something. Unexpectedly, Lai Kaixing waved his hand and said with a smile, "Since young Master Huang has such a refined interest, it's really good." Huang Baifu stared at Lai Kaixing. "Then, are you my opponent? It's said that you, Lai Kaixing, are the top person among the young generation in the Tao world. I'm really curious how powerful you are." "Seniors are just flattering me," Lai Kaixing said lightly. "The plain-clothes Tao is only a sect that observes the stars and looks at fortune. It's not strong in martial arts. I'm afraid I can't even withstand one move in front of young Master Huang. Your opponent this time is Momo, the orthodox successor of the celestial master Tao on Mount Long." Upon seeing that his provocation had failed, Huang Baifu did not care. He only shrugged and looked at Momo. The successor of Zhang Daoling's Tao orthodoxy is barely qualified. Everyone, please move to the interior of the mountain villa, Miss Gong said timely. After all, it was Momo's first time at the Crouching Dragon Mountain Villa, and everything here was abnormally unfamiliar. Therefore, when everyone followed Miss Gong to the interior of the mountain villa, he could not help but be shocked by the construction of this place. Although it was said to be the interior, it was actually directly moved to the underground of the mountain villa. There was actually an extremely huge martial arts practice field here. However, this huge square field in front of him was not tidy because Momo saw many traces of destruction. This martial arts practice field did not seem to be idle. At this moment, the Demon Association and the Tao Association were standing on the left and right sides of the martial arts practice field. The White Tiger young master, Huang Baifu, had directly jumped to the center of the field while Momo had yet to go up. Miss Gong was talking to him about something. Mr. Momo, keep this heaven's tear first, Miss Gong said solemnly. We hope you won't use it at the beginning. Momo nodded and said, It's to show the power of this thing. You mean I'll only use it if I can't beat him? Yes. Miss Gong nodded and said, Of course, I don't mean to look down on you. But your opponent is the White Tiger young master. Since Huang Baifu can be the representative of the White Tiger tribe, I think you should know what this means. Momo said solemnly, It's said that the 4 heavenly spirit tribes have the inheritance of the 4 mythical beasts. The most powerful offspring of the 4 tribes will be protected by the mythical beasts. Their strength is unfathomable. Miss Gong said, Not only that, but Huang Baifu is also one of the rare descendants of the White Tiger race who showed signs of atavism in the past 100 years. It is rumored that without using the power of the White Tiger race's inheritance, he once fought to a draw with the current Azure Dragon race's leader, Song Jinshui. This bone is not only hard to chew. Momo gave a bitter smile. I'm afraid I can't chew it. Mr. Momo, don't worry. Miss Gong said with a serious face, The representatives of the Tao Association will not let anything happen to you. Momo naturally understood this. Although it was said to be a test of heaven's tears, it was only an excuse for the Taoist and demon tribe to solve the problem. It was just that he was at this critical juncture. Now that he thought about it, wasn't the timing of Miss Gong's appearance too coincidental? He was just talking to Captain Ling Feng, and she immediately appeared and proposed this request as if she knew he would agree. Suddenly, Momo's heart jolted as he asked rapidly, Did Lai Kaixing ask you to come out at the beginning? Miss Gong gave a start but soon regained her composure, saying indifferently, I said I sensed the fluctuation of spiritual power outside the door and came out because I was worried something might happen. Really? Momo waved his hand, saying indifferently, Actually, it's very rare to be able to fight with the most outstanding genius of the White Tiger tribe. Putting aside the real intention behind this matter, I'm very willing to fight with Huang Baifu. Miss Gong remained silent for a while before nodding. In that case, Mr. Momo, please come out. Momo gave a carefree smile and walked towards the training field. If you want to use heaven's tears, you'd better use godly beating art to strengthen your body. And don't exceed 3 minutes. Miss Gong suddenly said in a low voice behind Momo. Momo turned around and whistled with a smile. Did anyone tell you that you're actually quite good-looking? Without waiting for Miss Gong to reply, Momo jumped onto the arena. He looked around and finally locked his eyes on Huang Baifu. He said loudly, I came in a hurry and didn't bring anything with me. Who can lend me a wooden sword? Huang Baifu sneered, Wooden sword? You're quite capable. Momo shook his head. I'm just used to using wooden swords. Didn't anyone tell you that we Celestial Master sect are used to using wooden swords to subdue demons? You've got guts. Huang Baifu suddenly laughed. If you don't die, I'll treat you to a drink. Thanks in advance. Momo chuckled. At this moment, an air-piercing sound was heard. A streamer shot to Momo's front in a flash. He took a closer look and discovered that it really was a wooden sword. However, this wooden sword was completely black and emitted a dark light. This sword is called Black Underworld. I picked it up from a Taoist who wasn't afraid of death. You can have it. Momo looked towards the source of the voice, opening his mouth in astonishment, because the person who gave him the sword wasn't from the Tao Association, but the Fengdu City Master of the Monster Association. However, his face was gloomy and uncertain, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy, angry, sad, or amused. It was impossible to know what he was thinking. Momo pulled out the black wooden sword. Suddenly, a fierce, baleful aura rushed to his body. He couldn't help but feel cold. He couldn't move at all. Huang Baifu frowned at the Fengdu City Master. Xiao Xing Mo, I don't need you to do anything unnecessary for the competition between me and this little Taoist. The Fengdu City Master sneered but didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Momo heaved a long sigh and bowed to the Fengdu City Master. Senior, thank you for giving me the sword. Momo held the wooden sword, and his dermic powers surged like 10,000 horses, making the black sword vibrate as if it was jumping in joy. Ha, Taoist Chang, he took in a good disciple. His dermic powers and cultivation level are so dense at such a young age. It's rare. A white-browed old man in the Tao Association stroked his beard and smiled. It looks like he's one step away from attaining heaven-man unity. The people around him looked at the old man, only to see that after the old man finished speaking, he directly sat on the ground with his legs crossed, closed his eyes, and began to meditate. However, no one dared to disturb the white-browed elder's meditation, as he had a highly respected status not only in the Tao Association but in the entire Tao world. They looked towards the martial arts practice field again. At this moment, Momo had already taken the initiative to attack Huang Baifu. In an instant, dozens of black gusts of wind appeared on the training field. They were actually coming from the black wooden sword. Momo heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the young senior in front of him. Speaking of which, he still didn't know his real name. He didn't believe that the name he heard in Louis Village by the seaside was his real name. He must be hiding something. Huang Baifu is indeed the most powerful genius of the White Tiger clan. Momo smiled bitterly. Although I got the black wooden sword that day and my strength increased greatly, I still couldn't break Huang Baifu's defense. I had to use Heaven's Tears in the end. Momo's expression was complicated. Are you unwilling? Luoqiu looked at him. The human clan and the demon clan are born different. Momo quickly recovered his spirit. Plus, Huang Baifu has the bloodline of the White Tiger, one of the 4 spirit beasts of heaven. I don't feel wronged at all. However, it's a pity that I didn't force him to use his real strength in the end. How's the effect of Heaven's Tears? Luoqiu suddenly asked. Momo seemed to have expected this question, so he answered without thinking, It's very strange. After using it, my spiritual power increased by 3 times, and my physical strength became unbelievably abundant. It even gave me an illusion that I was invincible. Besides, I couldn't even feel any pain, and my reflexes improved a lot. However, it's still not as good as Huang Baifu. It's really amazing that the Michael Club in the Western world could develop such a miraculous medicine. Momo pondered, but what's more surprising is that the Heaven's Tear is also effective on cultivators like us. If the side effect of the Heaven's Tear wasn't so severe, I think many people would want to fight for it, right? Luoqiu didn't seem to care about this, but asked curiously, what happened next? Momo recalled, the competition ended with my complete defeat. Then, I fell into a coma due to the effect of Heaven's Tears. However, the seniors of the Tao Association came to my rescue. Not only did they help me recover from my injuries, they even helped me refine my magic power, allowing me to improve my strength. How should I put it? It's like a blessing in disguise. But I think it's more like a reward for being a test subject. Momo looked at this senior's eyes and found that he was very calm. Momo scratched his head. How should I put it? I'm a bit annoyed that I was plotted against, but the Tao Association gave me compensation. If I think about it this way, I won't have so many problems. Why? Why? Momo gave a start, saying subconsciously, Taoists kill evil creatures in peace and quiet. If we attach too much importance to karma, wouldn't we be at a disadvantage? Besides, if I became paranoid because of this, it would affect my cultivation method. How can I talk about Taoism if I'm too vicious? What about now? Luocio said faintly. You just said that the poison in your body was given to you by people in the Tao world. Now, do you still think so? Chapter 999. In the backyard of the Song family, Luocio asked Momo to carry Jean Eyre because it wasn't a good idea to let him lie down like this. Additionally, they had to change their location due to some noises not far away. Don't worry, they're just the bodyguards of the owner. Luocio looked at Momo. They're probably just patrolling. Of course, because of your existence, there are some rumors about strange forces and gods in this village. Senior, if you don't mind, please follow me to the bottom of the ancient well. Momo forced a smile. I've been recuperating down there these days. And there's another world down there. Luocio nodded. He was more concerned about the so-called another world under the ancient well that Momo mentioned. Momo immediately carried Jean Eyre on his back and jumped into the ancient well after getting the permission of the senior. In the blink of an eye, Momo had reached the bottom of the ancient well. This place had dried up, even the soil was dry and hard. Momo raised his head and looked up. When he was about to shout, he turned around abruptly. He saw the senior was standing at the bottom of the ancient well with him. When did it happen? He didn't even hear any noise when he fell down. It was like moving in a flash. Momo had fought with this senior in Louis village. At that time, he knew that this senior had unfathomable power. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated him. He didn't know how this mysterious senior was compared with the bloodline inheritors of the 4 heavenly spirits of the Monster Association and the representatives of the Taoist Association. Is this the other world you mentioned? Luocio looked at the bottom of the ancient well. He found that there was actually another passageway here. The passageway was not simply a passageway for underground water to flow. Momo nodded and said seriously, Yes, there's a huge space hidden under the ancient well. I see that you have quite a few stone rooms, and there are even hidden mechanisms in them. Have you explored it? Luocio asked indifferently. Momo shook his head, No. First, I'm injured, so I can't take the risk. Secondly, since this place has set up such a mechanism, it must be to prevent outsiders from barging in. No matter what, I am considered to have come uninvited. If I were to barge in, it would naturally be bad. Luocio smiled at Momo. He didn't expect this blonde Taoist master to be such a rule-abiding person. Maybe he was the kind who would stop at the red light even on a deserted road in the middle of the night. Let's go in and have a look. Luocio waved his hand. A ball of light came out of his palm, illuminating the bottom of the ancient well and making the view here clearer. Momo said, Keep walking and you'll reach a spacious place. It should be like a living room. I've been hiding inside all this time, trying to see if I can get rid of the poison in my body. Luocio said, I heard that a family died in the Wang family ditch next door. Then someone saw the ghost of this family in the middle of the night. Later, a Taoist priest was invited to cast a spell and drove the evil ghost away, but it came here instead. What's going on? Momo's face darkened, saying bitterly, Senior, you're talking about Wang Dashuan's family. In fact, I'm the one who harmed them. Luocio stopped. Momo sighed. Jean Eyre has been in a coma since he got the edict. This time, the Taoist Association in Penglai Daha fought even more crazily, and there were forces from the monster world spying on them. That day I had no choice but to jump off the cliff. Later on, he was saved by a mysterious woman surnamed Qin, who saved his life. Later, I came to Wang Dashuan's family and was rescued by them. I wanted to leave after I got better, but I didn't expect that I was found by a few monster Taoists. I couldn't defeat them, so they cast a spell and swallowed the souls of Wang Dashuan's family. Later, I ran away and came to Song Village. A mysterious woman surnamed Qin? Luoqiu gaped. Momo nodded. This Miss Qin is quiet, but she seems to be otherworldly. I can't guess her background. Senior, do you know something? Nothing. Luoqiu shook his head. You've been hiding in the well. How did Jean wake up? Momo said. The poison in my body broke out very badly recently, and Jean also woke up these days. But as you saw, Jean became like this after he woke up. Even so, Jean didn't go far, as if to protect me. Later, those monster Taoists chased here, but they were killed by Jean. I also moved their bodies here. Alas! I've avenged Wang Dashuan's family. Luoqiu nodded. At this moment, he had walked to the living room that Momo had mentioned. He saw 3 corpses in the corner. It was cold and gloomy in the well, so the bodies didn't rot so quickly. Luoqiu looked at the structure of the stone room under the well, asking, What's your plan now? You've recovered from the poison, and you've recovered your ability to move. Jean will wake up after he wakes up, so I suggest you'd better consider the next situation. Momo muttered, To tell you the truth, according to the situation of the competition in the Penglai meeting, if I take Jean with me, I'm afraid it'll cause another bloody storm. So I plan to take Jean away as soon as possible and send him back to his master Yang Taizi. As for me, he shook his head, sighing, maybe I'll go back to Dragon Tiger Mountain first and tell my master Changhe about this. As for what I'll encounter in the future, I can only plan for the future. Senior, what do you think? It's none of my business, Luoqiu said. You can decide by yourself. Besides, can you deal with these bodies? Momo was stupefied. Luoqiu said indifferently, Since you think it's against the rules to break into other people's place, is it against the rules to leave the bodies here casually? Momo had noticed that a group of people came to this empty mansion, and the sudden appearance of this senior. Since this senior didn't come for the edict, did he know the owner of this mansion? It's my fault, please forgive me, senior. Momo hurriedly said, I'll deal with these 3 bodies as soon as possible. Go ahead. Luoqiu nodded. I'll take a look inside. Saying this, Luoqiu ignored Momo, walking straight to another corridor leading to the inside. Momo looked at the corpses in the corner, frowning and pinching a madra. Momo murmured while the spiritual power in his body surged rapidly. Suddenly, Momo uttered a chi sound, and the corpses on the ground started to move slowly. Of course, the corpses couldn't move by themselves. This was only the 5 ghosts moving technique. Seeing the 3 corpses start to move, Momo glanced at Jean. He thought that since that senior was here and had helped Jean to calm down, there should be no problem. Momo subconsciously didn't think about whether this senior would covet the edict like the Taoist Association and the Monster Association. Because with that senior's means, it would be too easy for him to steal the edict if he wanted to. He could just kill him and take Jean away. Why would he bother to remove the poison in his body? Where should I move these corpses? This was the only question he was considering. To Luoqiu's surprise, there was such a huge secret room under the ancient well of the Song family. The entrance of this secret room was obviously lower than the water level of the ancient well. If the ancient well hadn't been drained, this secret room might have remained unknown. Just like what Momo said, this secret room was extremely huge, with many passages like a maze. There were many traps in the different passages. This reminded Luoqiu of the time when he explored Zhang Jiao's tomb on the prairie. This might actually be a huge tomb. He had heard old Master Song mention before that the ancestors of the Song family came to this remote place to live in seclusion to avoid the chaos of war. But if it was just to live in seclusion, there was no need to deliberately build such a huge building under the mansion. Thinking about this, a huge stone door suddenly blocked Luoqiu's way. There were words carved on the stone door. It was a regular script. None of the Song family members are allowed to enter unless they have nowhere else to go. Song Chongqing, Song Chongqing. Luoqiu murmured his name, then closed his eyes. The door of his memory opened at this moment. He returned to the scene in the morning hall of old Master Song's humble home in South America. He remembered the name, Song Chongqing, was among the many memorial tablets in the morning hall. Luoqiu kept silent for a while, then pressed his hand on the stone door. Open. The stone door didn't open normally. Instead, it cracked from the center to the four corners, forming 4 equal triangles. Finally, it shrank into the left rear wall. The craftsmanship was truly amazing, because the time of construction of this underground stone room was clearly hundreds of years ago, or even hundreds of years ago. Song Chongqing, Song Chongqing. Song Yingxing? Luoqiu opened his mouth in amazement. Is it him? Thinking back to the various exquisite mechanisms and traps he saw along the way, as well as what old Master Song said about the Song family having many powerful people, Luoqiu was somewhat certain. Although he felt that it was inconceivable that one of the ancestors of the Song family was the author of the book Heaven's Creation, compared to the origin of the Song family, the direct descendant of the Song kingdom from 1,000 years ago, it didn't seem like much. This stone door was already the deepest part of this underground stone room. Behind it should be the end. In front of him was another secret room, but it was octagonal in structure. In the center of this secret room there was a huge stone coffin. The stone coffin had dragons and phoenixes carved on it, and it had a majestic aura. In the front corner of this octagonal secret room, there was a shrine. On the shrine, there was a memorial tablet enshrined, with the words, Valiant Emperor Wenshende written on it. In front of the memorial tablet, there was a brocade box. Luoqiu walked around the sarcophagus in the center to the shrine. He saw that there was an old praying mat in front of the shrine. After thinking for a moment, he didn't kneel in front of the praying mat. Instead, he bowed in front of the shrine. After that, Luoqiu opened the brocade box on the shrine. Inside was a handwritten letter. The letter described the cause and effect of the ancestors of the Song family coming to this place. Back then, the Song family didn't live in seclusion to avoid the chaos of war. Instead, they lived in seclusion to avoid the pursuit of those in power. Because the Song family was the descendant of the valiant Emperor Wenshende, to those in power, they were the remnants of the previous dynasty and had to be eliminated. Later on, the Song family who lived in seclusion here would send their descendants out every once in a while. First, it was to observe the changes of the times. Second, it was to train. Because of the long period of seclusion and peace, it was easy for the descendants of the Song family to lose the ability to deal with danger. The Song Chongqing, written on the stone door of this octagonal stone room, was one of the descendants who went out. And this huge underground building of the Song family ancestral home was built by the Song family generation after generation. There was even a living area, an abundant water source, and a place to store food. It was the last resort of the Song family. As for the ancestral wealth of the Song family that was recorded in the letter, Luoqiu had no interest in it. He had to think of a way to let old Master Song discover this place. After all, he was the head of the Song family. Just as Luoqiu was about to put the brocade box back to its original position, he suddenly had a thought. There was a sign outside the door that said, "Those who are not desperate are not allowed to enter." If it was a warning to the descendants of the Song clan that this enormous underground stone room was their last resort, shouldn't it have been written at the entrance at the very beginning? Why did it have to be written on the stone door in the deepest part of the room? Luoqiu moved his gaze to the stone coffin. This time, he directly walked in front of the stone coffin, walked around it, and finally put his palm on the coffin lid. With a gentle push of his palm, the coffin lid slowly moved away, and finally flew out horizontally, and then gently landed on the ground. Luoqiu looked inside the stone coffin. He saw a middle-aged man lying inside the stone coffin. The man was wearing a cloud dragon red silk robe and a heavenly crown on his head. His face was dignified. As for his hands, they were placed on his abdomen, and in his hand was a strange stone rui. Luochu frowned, and directly took the jade rui from the middle-aged man's hand, and carefully looked at it. What surprised Luochu was that this stone rui had a very familiar engraving on it. This was the engraving on the discount black card that the club gave to some customers. It represented the discount. But just as Luochu was about to carefully look at it, the stone rui in his hand unexpectedly shattered little by little, and directly turned into powder from Luochu's hand, and fell to the ground as if it had lost some of its original power. Chapter 1000. The stone rui in his hand naturally shattered. Of course, if Luochu had not picked it up, it might have remained in its original state. But in the end, this stone rui had already lost its original function. That being said, Luochu was not used to breaking things. Therefore, the dust that had fallen to the ground quickly gathered on his palm. It was as if time was flowing backward. In just a moment, the shattered stone rui was restored. Luochu intended to put this stone rui back into the hands of the yellow-robed man in the sarcophagus. But at this moment, the man in the royal robe, who was lying peacefully in the sarcophagus, suddenly opened his eyes. If ordinary people saw this scene, they would probably be scared half to death. When I entered, a gentleman in the same trade said that this was an excellent place with good feng shui. Luochu was not alarmed. He just pried open the man's palm and put the stone rui back to its original position. He continued, "Since you are here to recuperate your soul, it is better that you don't wake up before you recover. I don't have any evil intentions. I am just curious," and Luochu looked into the middle-aged man's eyes and said indifferently, "I don't intend to reveal your existence to anyone." Then, the dignified man slowly closed his eyes. At the same time, Luochu reached out and grabbed. The sarcophagus lid flew from the ground and returned to its original position. "Times are changing," Luochu said indifferently. "Even if you are the monarch of a country, even if you wake up, what can you change? This world is no longer the world it used to be." The man in the sarcophagus was probably just a pitiful person who was immersed in unrealistic fantasies. Luochu shook his head. This ancestral home of the Song family might really be a place with good feng shui. But if he wanted to use the power of this place to keep the soul that should have dispersed long ago, or even revive it, it was just wishful thinking. How could it be so easy to bring back a life that had already disappeared? The soul in the sarcophagus had not dispersed for thousands of years. It was already extremely difficult. Luochu didn't take anything away from the stone chamber. He just let everything return to its original state. He had only been here, but he had not left any traces behind. When he returned outside, Momo was feeding Jean water. The 3 corpses were gone. Presumably, Momo had taken care of them. "Senior." Seeing Luochu walking out, Momo hurriedly stood up and asked with concern, "Is there any danger here?" Luochu said casually, "Since you don't intend to explore this thing, is it important to you whether it is dangerous or not?" Momo smiled embarrassedly. Although he made up his mind not to barge in, he was still curious. However, from the tone of this senior, it seemed that there was a hint of warning in it. "When you went out to deal with the bodies, did you run into anyone you knew?" Unexpectedly, Luochu suddenly asked. "An acquaintance?" Momo was startled, but at the same time, he seemed to have realized something. He turned around abruptly and was shocked when, "Who are you?" At the bottom of the ancient well, at the entrance leading to this place, a figure had appeared out of nowhere. Hearing this, the figure slowly walked in. This person had a thin figure, wore a black tang suit, and had a bronze mask on his face. This mysterious man with a bronze mask slightly moved his head, looking at Jean, who hadn't woken up yet. Momo frowned and blocked the sight of this mysterious man, asking in a low voice, "Who are you? What's your purpose of following me?" However, the mysterious man didn't say anything, but put his eyes on Luochu again. He seemed to be staring at Luo Qiu in silence. Momo had already prepared himself. He stretched out his hand with a yellow talisman between his fingers. "You're very special." Suddenly, the mysterious person spoke slowly. His voice was very low and deep, and it was probably done on purpose. "Before I came, I didn't even know of your existence or that you would be here. How did you do it?" Momo looked at the senior he admired in surprise. Luoqiu thought for a while, asking curiously, "You didn't even know I was here? In other words, you knew who was here, right?" The mysterious man was silent at this time, but the eyes behind the bronze mask never left Luoqiu. After a while, the mysterious man shook his head and said indifferently, "Well, it doesn't matter if there is one more or one less. Momo, do you know why I'm here?" "No need to guess." Momo sneered. Although the guy before is vicious, he still dares to show his true face. "But you, the one who hides in the dark. Come on. Since you want to fight for the edict, you can go through me first." Then, Momo's spiritual power surged. A golden flame came out of his palm and poured into the yellow talisman between his fingers. The mysterious man snorted. "Dragon Tiger Mountain's Taoist sect does have real talent, but you're not the strongest Yin-Yang Taoist master. Don't struggle, you can't protect this kid's opportunity. Just give it up. I'm just taking the edict, not his life." "Cut the crap, let's fight." Momo gritted his teeth. The yellow talisman in his hand shot out. "Thunder God incantation." "Taoist sect? I can do that too." Unexpectedly, at this moment, a yellow talisman suddenly appeared in the mysterious person's palm. The mysterious person used the same method to shoot out the yellow talisman. The two yellow talismans collided with each other in the air and instantly produced a loud bang. The explosion of the talismans produced a shock wave that spread out in all directions. The ceiling of the stone chamber at the bottom of the well was instantly filled with debris. Luoqiu couldn't help frowning. "Thunder God incantation. What's wrong with you?" Momo turned pale with fright. There were different schools of thunder spells in Taoism. Each sect had its own special incantation and technique. It couldn't be done by simple spiritual power simulation. Momo couldn't be more familiar with the thunder spells of Heavenly Master Taoism. At this moment, when the two Thunder God incantations collided, Momo could clearly feel that the opponent was using the same magic power as him. It's not hard to learn the thunder spells of Taoist sect. The mysterious man opened and closed his hands. Dozens of yellow talismans were floating in his palms. At this moment, lightning flashed in the air with crackling sounds, making the mysterious man look even more inferior. "Great Thunder God incantation. I don't know if you've mastered it." Momo gritted his teeth, sweat oozing out of his forehead. He had used up all the talismans on his way here, and his luggage was still in Wulong Mountain Villa. It would be very difficult to resist the Great Thunder God incantation. However, right at this moment the sound of a finger snapping was heard. Momo was startled, but the Great Thunder God incantation in the mysterious man's hands seemed to be extinguished at the same time, and the yellow talismans started burning automatically. The mysterious man looked at Luoqiu subconsciously, and Momo also looked at him in surprise. "I haven't seen a fight between Taoists. I'm really interested. But, can we not do it here?" Luoqiu said indifferently, "Don't you think it's irresponsible to fight indoors? Who's going to pay for the broken things? Meddling in other people's business has a price." The mysterious man said in a low voice. "I said, don't fight indoors." Luoqiu shook his head. "I don't mean to interfere." "Well, it's my fault for breaking your things, I'll pay for it." As soon as Luoqiu finished his words, those yellow talismans that had been burned to ashes gathered in the air. At this moment, the time that existed on these yellow talismans seemed to flow in reverse. From being burned to being brand new, they finally returned to the mysterious person's side. "There's a lot of empty space outside the mansion," Luoqiu said casually, "but if you're fighting loudly, I suggest you go further away. After all, it's immoral to disturb people's sleep." At this moment, the mysterious man suddenly stretched out his hand to collect the yellow talismans. Just when Momo was worried that the mysterious man was going to use the great thunder god curse again, the mysterious man didn't utter a word and retreated at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, Momo couldn't even feel the slightest wave of the mysterious man's spiritual power. That was to say, the mysterious man simply left. Or he escaped. Under this senior's miraculous methods, he had no choice but to retreat. What about you? Do you want to continue? Luocio looked at Momo. Momo hurriedly calmed down his spiritual power, swallowing his saliva. Senior, I don't like to fight indoors, either. Luocio said indifferently, I'm not helping you. But this place is related to me, I don't like to see it being destroyed. As for what happens after that, it will depend on your own fate. Momo nodded obediently. Perhaps if this senior could help him, the numbness of this Penglai convention would be easily solved. But somehow, Momo felt that this senior didn't mean that. He didn't want to fight for the edict, nor did he want to help him. Senior, I'll leave with Jean-Eyre at dawn, don't worry. Momo said seriously. After all, I don't want to see what happened to Wang Dashuan's family a second time. Luocio nodded. Momo glanced at Jean-Eyre asking, Senior, what do you think will happen to Jean-Eyre in the future? I don't know much about cultivation. Luocio shook his head and said, but since you Taoist cultivators use artificial methods to cultivate, even if there are some problems, people should be able to find a solution. Momo thought for a while, and then bowed deeply towards this senior. However, when he raised his head, he couldn't see this mysterious senior anymore. Oh no! I forgot to ask for this senior's name again. The black shadow leaped through the forest and soon passed through a small forest. Finally, it arrived in front of a small stream. This was the mysterious man who suddenly appeared at the bottom of the ancient well. Under the moonlight, this mysterious man sat on a rock by the stream, carefully looking at a stack of yellow talismans in his hand. It doesn't look like an illusion, the mysterious man murmured, but if it's not an illusion, there's someone in this world who can restore the broken pieces? This wasn't a simple matter of sticking the broken pieces back together. Instead, it was a matter of restoring the ashes back to its original state. The principles involved in this were something that even Tao arts couldn't explain. Why can't I figure out this person's existence? The mysterious man suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, greatly shocked. Heaven's secret. Heaven's secret is hiding this person's existence? How is that possible? The mysterious man felt a chill on his back when the cold wind blew. This was a weird thing he had never encountered before. But at this moment, his phone suddenly rang. What's the matter? The mysterious man answered the phone. What? Whose idea is it? Taoist Association or Monster Association? Or their joint statement? The person on the other side of the phone said anxiously, No. It's Xianyuan Palace. I heard it was instructed by Long Shiruo and approved by the Bureau of Land Management of the Special State. I see. The mysterious man said in a low voice, Don't do anything for the time being. I've also encountered some obstacles here. After that, the mysterious man turned off the phone, stood up, looked back at the direction of the mansion he broke into tonight, and then resolutely merged into the night. After dawn, Uncle Wu came to Luocio's room and knocked on the door, telling him that breakfast was ready. Uncle Wu was indeed a very responsible butler. Although the conditions here were a bit shabby, he still brought some hot water for washing up. Thank you. Luocio politely took the hot water from Uncle Wu with both hands. Did Old Master Song sleep well last night? Old Master slept very deeply and didn't wake up at night. Uncle Wu smiled slightly. He just woke up and is washing up, but his complexion looks quite good. That's good. Luocio smiled. Then you go ahead with your business, I'll come out later. Okay, Master Chiu. Uncle Wu nodded and then left quickly. After closing the door, Luocio walked to the table in the room, The 3D map of the Song family's ancestral house that appeared last night was still there. However, there was no one at the bottom of the ancient well. Momo kept his promise and left with Jean-Eyre as soon as dawn broke. Luocio erased the structure map, and then began to wash up. Well, he seemed to have forgotten something. Master! Master! Master? Shouts came from the bottom of the room, which made Song Hauran feel a bit sad. How should he go down? It was not that he couldn't go down, but he didn't want others to know what he wanted to do on the roof, and he didn't want others to know that he not only came up to the roof, but also stayed here for the whole night. Yes, Song Hauran had been looking at the structure map of Song family's ancestral house in his mind for the whole night, but he didn't find anything. Chapter 1001. Juefeng yawned and scratched his back. It was itchy. I haven't taken a bath recently. Are there lice on my body? Of course, this might just be an illusion. After all, it was too boring for him now. Because early in the morning, his elder brother Mo Xiaofei, to be exact, his elder brother Mo Xiaofei suddenly got up and meditated as if he had changed into another person. He also said that the yang qi of the morning glow was very precious and could train the pure yang qi in one's body so that the golden spear would not fall. Although he would ask strange questions and seemed to lack common sense more than himself, Juefeng felt that Big Brother Mo Xiaofei was still the original Big Brother Mo Xiaofei. He just fell asleep in his body while the other Big Brother Mo Xiaofei woke up. Juefeng didn't know how to explain this phenomenon. He just had such a feeling. But it was indeed very painful to meditate with the current Big Brother Mo Xiaofei. They had been meditating for almost 2 hours. Suddenly, on a big rock in the bamboo forest, Mo Xiaofei, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly opened his eyes and exhaled. Well, this era is really ridiculous. The vitality is so turbid. 2 hours of breathing is not as good as the previous moment. But this body is full of energy, as if it has infinite potential. While he was thinking to himself, he saw Juefeng open his eyes and look at him curiously. This half-grown monster clan is simple and seems to have a good relationship with this body. Mo Xiaofei pondered for a moment, suddenly looked at Juefeng and said, Juefeng, it's still early. Let me test your martial arts. What? Juefeng was stunned. Martial arts? Big brother, do you want to fight with me? Kind of. Mo Xiaofei didn't care at this time. He knew that times were changing, so he didn't insist on these details. You can practice with me. I can also familiarize myself with the other strange power in my body. As he spoke, Mo Xiaofei slowly levitated. This superpower was the strange power that he had mentioned. After a day or two of research, he found that this strange force mainly relied on the human spirit. It could also be one's will. Not only was it mysterious, but it was also very useful. Alright, then let's practice. Juefeng stood up and moved his body. Speaking of which, it had been a while since he had sparred with Big Brother Mo Xiaofei, so his hands were itching. Call me first. Mo Xiaofei nodded and waved his hand. Then, I won't be polite. Wind-chasing wolf laughed and disappeared in a flash. Divine ability, Godspeed. Juefeng's sudden disappearance made Mo Xiaofei frown subconsciously, but he wasn't too alarmed. He just carefully observed the surroundings. Suddenly, Mo Xiaofei swung his palm backward. His 5 fingers spread out like a hard wall, and his palm was blocking a fist that suddenly came at him. Bang! A ring-shaped airwave spread out from the bodies of Juefeng and Mo Xiaofei. The bamboos in the bamboo forest rustled and the bamboo leaves fell crazily. He blocked it so easily? Juefeng was startled and then retreated quickly. Godspeed gave him extraordinary speed. He moved to the front of Mo Xiaofei in an instant and opened his mouth in surprise. Previously, Big Brother Mo Xiaofei could also block his sneak attack, but he had never done it so casually. So powerful, Big Brother Mo Xiaofei is so powerful now. Windchaser suddenly felt a particularly fierce aura coming from Big Brother Mo Xiaofei. You have too many unnecessary movements, but this move is not bad. Mo Xiaofei looked at wind-chasing wolf indifferently. Adjust your breathing. Restrain your unnecessary aura, and the effect of your attack will be improved. Xuefeng scratched his head and said in distress, Big brother, Sir Sun Shaoxing also said this, but I don't know how to adjust it. Sun Shaoxing? Who is this person? Mo Xiaofei frowned and asked. He is our previous coach. Xuefeng had long been accustomed to Mo Xiaofei's ignorance, so he simply said patiently, and he is the boss of the Elysium Bar. He is a very powerful big demon in our demon clan. Big demon? Mo Xiaofei nodded. Let's get to know each other in the future. Now let's continue. Xuefeng nodded and activated Godspeed again. This time, he superimposed another supernatural power, the new supernatural power in the greedy wolf's inheritance that was recently beaten out by Sun Shaoxing. Supernatural power, King Kong. In an instant, Mo Xiaofei stood still, but a terrifying cyclone appeared around him. Loud noises kept coming from the air. Xuefeng's fists hit the cyclone of Mo Xiaofei again and again. The cyclone was dented again and again, but he could not break through it. At this time, Xuefeng's stubbornness rose. Seeing that the defense could not be broken after a long time, he gritted his teeth. Supernatural power, Godspeed, giant strength, King Kong. In an instant, a huge vortex suddenly appeared above the bamboo forest. Mo Xiaofei looked up and smiled slightly. Good momentum, then I will. He took a deep breath slowly. In an instant, the vortex above his head fell crazily. At this moment, Mo Xiaofei just slowly threw a punch. Unlike the loud noises before, when Mo Xiaofei's fist collided with the vortex, there was no sound at all. Under Mo Xiaofei's fist, the vortex dissipated quietly. Only Xuefeng, who was in the center of the vortex at this time, showed an incredible look. However, Xuefeng was not stunned for long. He felt that brother Mo Xiaofei's fist still had some power, and it instantly hit him into the air like thousands of horses galloping. What? Xuefeng was a Xuefeng who couldn't fly. When his body flew up to the point where the power of the fist was exhausted, he could only fall to the ground and then shout, bang! There was a big human shape on the ground. Xuefeng coughed and spat out the soil in his mouth. At the same time, he rubbed his completely numb arm and staggered to stand up. That punch was Huangji's shocking fist. Mo Xiaofei said indifferently, Do you want to learn the Emperor's martial arts? Xuefeng said subconsciously, You want to teach me? Mo Xiaofei nodded. I can teach you the first 3 moves. Whether you can learn it or not depends on your own comprehension. Why, you don't want to learn it? Of course. Roar. In the garden of a villa near Mount Tai. In the garden, in a pavilion surrounded by many flowers, Luo Dance, who had an impressive figure, was sitting here. The fragrance of the flowers made her very energetic, and she was in an unusually good mood. She heard from Grandpa Chichi Kamaya that this villa was the property of Xianyuan Palace, which was the property of her sister Su Zijuan. Luo Dance felt that Su Zijuan was very powerful since a long time ago. If it were her, she didn't know how many years of work she would have to work to afford such a huge villa. At this time, Luo Dance was sucking the malt candy that was made from pure natural honey nearby while flipping through a book of test questions that she brought from home. The maltose candy made people happier, so she seemed to be carefree and was humming a nameless tune at this time. What is she doing? In the study on the 3rd floor of the villa, Chichi Kamaya, who had just arrived, looked down through the window and asked curiously. At this time, Long Shiruo, who was sitting in front of the desk, said indifferently, reviewing homework, What did the child say? It's almost time for her to be an adult when she goes back, so she can't neglect her studies. Chichi Kamaya was startled, pondered for a moment and frowned. This child is more and more like a human being. Long Shiruo said indifferently, What's wrong with that? She's like a human, but not really a human. Only those who are willing to learn can understand the essence of human beings. In today's human world, if demons don't learn more and stay close to the current trend, they will be eliminated sooner or later. Chichi Kamaya opened his eyes slightly. As the Shinryu of Kelowna, and also respected by the monster world, you'd better not say some words in front of monsters. Long Shirua glanced at Chichi Kamaya, and suddenly said, "Including in front of you?" "Including in front of this old one." The study became quiet all of a sudden. Long Shirua simply closed her eyes. Not long after, there was a knock on the door, and then Ghost Baby pushed the door open and entered. "Lord Long, Master Turtle." Chichi Kamaya nodded, looking at Ghost Baby. "Has the statement been released?" Ghost Baby nodded. "It's been sent to Crouching Dragon Villa and Koan Prung Villa respectively." Chichi Kamaya smiled with satisfaction. "What? Those guys didn't make things difficult for you?" Ghost Baby said, "After all, this is the statement of Xianyuan Palace, and also the order of Lord Long. Let's not talk about what the Monster Association thought. The Monster Association didn't dare to refuse. Instead, they accepted it very respectfully, and began to recall all the monsters who were searching for Momo." Chichi Kamaya suddenly glanced at Long Shirua, saying in a strange tone, "These monsters are really obedient." Ghost Baby glanced back and forth between Long Shirua and Chichi Kamaya, feeling that something had happened between them before he came. But he didn't dare to interrupt, and could only stand there silently. Long Shirua didn't hear Chichi Kamaya's strange tone, and said indifferently, "The Taoist Association has never been obedient. But since they accepted it, they will probably restrain themselves." Ghost Baby nodded. "I think the Tao Association will restrain themselves. After all, we issued a joint statement with the Bureau of Land Management of the special country. In other words, it's an official statement. Even if they're unwilling, they won't go against us openly." Long Shirua shook her head. "It's hard to say. Some of them are probably going crazy trying to become immortals. Immortals are elusive. How can there be a path to heaven in the world?" Chichi Kamaya sighed slowly. "I just didn't expect that the god of Mount Tai's edict would appear in this Punglai conference. I don't know if it's God's will or humans' doing." Long Shirua suddenly said, "Who can be sure that it's really the god of Mount Tai's thing without seeing the real edict for a day?" Chichi Kamaya was stunned. "Lord Long, what do you mean?" Long Shirua snorted coldly. "If there's really the inheritance of the Emperor of Mount Tai hidden in the peaks of Mount Tai, why don't I know about it after so many years?" She was the Shinryu who guarded Kelowna. As long as she stood on the land of Kelowna, and as long as the dragon veins of Kelowna were not destroyed, Shinryu was immortal. The veins of Kelowna were naturally connected to Shinryu. Chichi Kamaya patted his head at this time and nodded. "Well, I almost forgot that, Lord Long, you're a human-shaped treasure-hunting device. So, this edict is weird?" Long Shirua shook her head again. "It's weird, but I can't tell whether it's true or not. And since I came to Mount Tai, I always felt uncomfortable. Especially since yesterday, this feeling has become stronger." "Uncomfortable?" Chichi Kamaya opened his mouth. It was often said that when living creatures encountered natural enemies or natural disasters, they would have an innate reaction. Could it be that there would be some major changes in the future Punglai conference of Mount Tai? Chichi Kamaya didn't doubt Long Shirua's feeling because she was the incarnation of many spiritual veins of Kelowna. She was connected to the luck of Kelowna and couldn't be separated. Does Lord Long have any dream signs?" Chichi Kamaya asked quickly. Long Shirua glanced at Chichi Kamaya coldly. Since she lost too much blood and became like this, she had insomnia and dreams every day. "Lord Long." Chichi Kamaya frowned. Long Shirua waved her hand and said, "Nothing. Wait, I need to answer the phone." The phone on the table vibrated at this time. Long Shirua glanced at it and found that it was actually Sun Shaoxing calling. This guy actually called her. It was the first time. Of course, this was left to Sun Shaoxing as Su Zijuan's niece before she left. Sun Shaoxing dared to make this call because of this, right? Just at the moment when the phone was connected, Long Shirua's ears were almost deafened. On the other end of the phone, the loud music and noise made Long Shirua frown involuntarily. What? He left a letter and left? When did it happen? Last week. You actually only told me now? Long Shirua slammed the table and stood up. She looked furious. At this time, Sun Shaoxing, who was in the Elysium bar thousands of miles away, was holding the phone with his neck while grabbing his crotch. He said casually, I forgot. I took some new pills today. I only remembered it when I was energetic. Little girl, you are so young. Why don't you learn anything? Why do you have to learn the bad temper of old Lady Long? I tell you, this is not good. Sun Shaoxing, you are dead. That's it. The roar was quite similar to Long Shirua's. Brother Shaoxing took the phone away at this time, rubbed his ears, shook his head, and simply hung up the phone. After that, Brother Shaoxing took out his hand from his crotch, rubbed the dust on his fingers into a small ball and popped it out. He opened the window of the office, and below was the dance floor of the bar. Guys, who is the most handsome here? Brother Shaoxing. Chapter 1002. When Sun Shaoxing hung up the phone directly, Long Shirua, who was thousands of miles away, was stunned. She suddenly threw the phone in her hand to the ground and gritted her teeth. But unexpectedly, a bright light suddenly flashed in the study room, and there was a click sound. Kamaya, what are you doing? Long Shirua suddenly frowned. Because this old tortoise took out a phone from nowhere. The flash just now seemed to be from the flash of the phone's camera. Oh. I couldn't help it for a while. Kamaya said with a deep face at this moment. I just want to find some memories of the past. I haven't seen you like this for a long time. The pink face was so cute even when she was angry. Kamaya's thoughts couldn't help but go back to a long time ago. At that time, there was always a little girl riding on his back happily, saying that she wanted to travel through the mountains and seas. She also said that she wanted to save the world. Long Shirua rolled her eyes, then she sat down sulkily. At this time, Ghost Baby saw that the two adults were almost done arguing, so he dared to speak. Lord Long, after everyone in the Demon Beast Association knew that you appeared, they all said that they wanted to visit you in person. Especially the few from the 4 spirit clans of the sky. They said that you haven't been to their tribe for a long time. Not interested. Long Shirua waved her hand. Reject it from me. Just say that I'm not free. There is also the Special State Land Administration. I hope that you can take the time to go there and fulfill your obligations as a special consultant. I don't see them giving me a salary. Long Shirua sneered. I don't want to see them. Besides, with the current appearance of the true dragon of the Divine Land, it was indeed impossible for her to meet anyone. If the Divine Land's transcendents were to find out that the true dragon of the Divine Land was merely a lowly, or rather, a child, what would happen? Thinking of this irritating matter, Long Shirua took out a pack of Mount Tai cigarettes from the drawer. After lighting it, she leaned back in the chair and smoked helplessly. Kamaya and Ghost Baby looked at each other and shook their heads. Long Shirua suddenly said weakly at this time, Kamaya, send some men to pay attention. My half-baked disciple may appear nearby recently. Emo Xiaofei? Kamaya frowned because Kamaya was still somewhat conflicted about Long Shirua's subordinate Emo Xiaofei. This had nothing to do with Emo Xiaofei's character. It was purely a problem between the human race and the monster race. I don't know how this child awakened some memories of his previous life and became interested in his own previous life. Long Shirua shook her head and said, I casually mentioned the cloth sect before I left. I guess he wants to look for it. There is also Wind-Chasing Wolf. They left together and left together. One is the Greedy Wolf Star, the other is a person whose body was transformed by Shinryu's blood essence. This combination is really... Kamaya suddenly smiled bitterly, feeling that this combination would be a big trouble. Now, Mount Tai was already in a mess. He didn't know if the arrival of Mo Xiaofei and Windchaser would add any variables. Understood, I'll send people to pay attention to all the major stations. Chichi Kamaya nodded. Long Shirua stuffed the cigarette butt into the ashtray at this time, then stood up. Contact me if there's anything. I have something to do, so I'll go out these 2 days. Chichi Kamaya was stunned. It's New Year's Eve in 2 days. Where are you going? Long Shirua said indifferently, there's a little guy I haven't seen for a long time. Since I've come to Mount Tai, I'll go and have a look. After all, this little guy is a dragon. Chichi Kamaya opened his eyes slightly. Long Shirua didn't speak. She just pushed open the window and shouted down, Pianxian, go out with me. Stop reading. With that, Long Shirua directly walked out of the study. Ghost Baby suddenly said, Prime Minister, don't we need to find some big brothers to follow Lord Long? After all, she's in such a state now. If she encounters any danger. Chichi Kamaya shook his head. We don't have enough people. We also need to monitor the Taoist Association and the Monster Association. Let's leave it here. She's not completely defenseless. But there's one thing you need to do right now. Ghost Baby listened attentively for fear of missing a word. Chichi Kamaya solemnly stuffed his mobile phone into Ghost Baby's hand, saying seriously, go and develop the photos I just took. Later, Song Haoran couldn't even remember why he climbed up the roof, let alone the figure he saw crawling in the dark when he first arrived last night, before breakfast. Why do you keep pinching your shoulders? At the dining table, Song Ying looked at Song Haoran curiously and asked. Song Haoran twisted his neck, making cracking sounds, and said casually, maybe I'm not used to sleeping on the bed. I feel my shoulders are a bit stiff. Song Ying casually said, oh. At this time, Luoqiu appeared outside the door of the living room. Coincidentally, Zhang Qingrui arrived at the same time. When the two met at the door, Zhang Qingrui smiled and said good morning to him. Morning. Luoqiu returned a smile. They didn't talk much. Just like in the past, he always nodded to her when he saw her in the classroom, and she just nodded back as if they had some kind of tacit understanding. Then they sat down separately. Breakfast was relatively simple. Due to the limited conditions, Uncle Wu went out early and brought back some sweet foam from the village entrance. A big bowl of steaming hot sweet foam gave people a sense of warmth in the middle of winter morning. The sweet foam was actually not sweet. It was actually salty porridge. It was mixed with large pieces of spinach leaves, small pieces of shredded tofu, cowpeas and peanuts, and there was a faint spicy taste of ginger and pepper. It was very smooth to drink. After breakfast, Song Tianyu talked about going to the ancestral grave to worship. This was the family affair of the Song family, so Zhang Qingrui didn't want to participate in it. However, because the Song family and her grandmother would have a large-scale cooperation, she had to stay. Her grandmother, Zhang Lilanfang, was too old to go out. Moreover, the cooperation with the Song family here was very important. If Mr. Seven only took charge of it, it would seem that they were not sincere enough. In fact, Zhang Qingrui could understand the reason why her grandmother was anxious about her marriage. It was said that the Song family had a big business but few people. However, the Zhang family was the real weak one, with only 2 people, an orphan and a widow. In a few more years, when all the loyal members of the Zhang and Li families were gone, Zhang Qingrui wouldn't be able to support the family on her own. Then, the 2 ancient families would fall apart or fall into decline. But did she have to rely on her marriage? Now the marriage with Zhong Luochen of the Zhong family was basically in a deadlock. She hadn't contacted Zhong Luochen for a long time. She didn't know what the second young master of the Zhong family was doing recently. She always felt that he was a bit mysterious. Marriage, after all, she was a woman. When thinking about this problem, she couldn't help thinking about it no matter how noble she was. Zhang Qingrui glanced at Luoqiu, who was holding a bowl of sweet foam and eating it carefully. Was it so delicious? He ate it so carefully as if he was tasting something precious. Luoqiu seemed to have noticed Zhang Qingrui's gaze, so he looked at her. But when their gazes touched, Zhang Qingrui moved her eyes away slightly. Flirting with each other. Song Ying, who was at the side, suddenly muttered softly. Then Old Master Song was still talking about worshipping the ancestors. Zhang Qingrui finished the food quickly and said, Old Master Song, please excuse me. I want to call and greet my grandmother. Of course. Song Tianyu didn't mind. It was indeed inappropriate for an outsider to listen to him talk about the ancestral worship. However, he suddenly had an idea and said, Miss Zhang, it will be New Year's Eve in 2 days. Why don't we bring your grandmother over and celebrate the New Year with our two families? Zhang Qingrui opened her beautiful mouth slightly. Song Tianyu smiled. You see, it's not good to leave you here alone. And it's not good to leave Sister Li alone at home either. So, if your grandmother's health allows, can she come here? I haven't seen her for many years. Zhang Qingrui was indeed reluctant to leave her grandmother alone at home thousands of miles away. She pondered for a while and nodded. I'll ask her about it. Of course. Song Tianyu smiled amiably. Then I won't keep you. If you need anything, feel free to look for fifth uncle. Zhang Qingrui then left. The Song family discussed the matter for the whole morning. In the afternoon, Uncle Wu went to buy the materials for worshipping the ancestors. In fact, before the Song family set off, a group of people had already left and came here to make preparations. Now, as long as fifth uncle sent out the location, the materials that had been prepared in advance would be delivered. It was estimated that they would arrive at night. After eating something for lunch, Song Tianyu felt a little sleepy, so he went to his room to rest. Last night there was no haunting, as Song Bo said. Song Ying thought it was just the imagination of the villagers and didn't care too much about it. Although this place was beautiful, there were too few entertainment items. Song Ying couldn't sit still, so he used the satellite connection to deal with the affairs of the group. Song Haoran suddenly suggested, How about we go to find the dragon? In the hall, Song Ying, who was typing on the keyboard, suddenly stopped. On the other side, Luoqiu, who was reading some basic old books, also raised his head. That, Song Haoran said with a smile. Didn't Dad say there was a pool here where the child of the dragon god lived? Let's explore it. Song Ying chuckled twice, and then continued to type on the keyboard on the laptop. She didn't even look at Song Haoran as she said, I have a video conference later. Besides, do you know how much less the company will make while you are exploring? Song Haoran narrowed his eyes again. He suddenly walked to Luoqiu's side, took the book from Luoqiu's hand and closed it. This made Luoqiu blink in surprise. Song Haoran said with a smile, Little Luoqiu, let's go explore. The sound of typing on the keyboard suddenly slowed down. Luoqiu thought for a while and suddenly smiled. Well, let's go for a walk. We should take a walk after dinner. Song Haoran said at this time, Do you want to call your female classmate? The sound of typing on the keyboard slowed down. Luoqiu said, We should inform her out of courtesy. The sound of typing on the keyboard stopped, followed by the shrill sound of the chair moving back. Song Ying suddenly stood up and stretched. She said to herself, I'm too full. Let's go for a walk. Song Haoran, where did you say we were going? Song Haoran's eyes narrowed even more. Didn't you say there was a video conference? It was cancelled at the last minute, Song Ying said expressionlessly. Song Haoran teased. Aya, you will lose a lot of money. Song Ying said coldly, It's okay. I can just cut off your monthly allowance. Song Haoran's neck was stiff as he smiled and blinked at Luoqiu. Get ready to go out. Luoqiu smiled. These two were really cute. In front of the crowded elevator, a professional woman with a pair of dark circles was yawning and swiping the screen of her mobile phone. Ren Xiling. Suddenly, her left shoulder was patted gently, so Ren Xiling habitually looked to the right and saw Lizzie hiding behind her. Why are you looking at this side? Why am I not looking at this side? That was where the conversation between the two of them officially began. Looking at Ren Xiling's slovenly appearance, Lizzie couldn't help but sigh and say, "Sister Ren, why do you look like a heroine who hasn't appeared in hundreds of episodes on TV? Do you have sadness written on your forehead?" "There's no energy." Ren Xiling yawned. "There's no energy for Luochio. I'm going to die." Lizzie snorted and then asked curiously, "There are still 2 days before New Year's Eve. Why, your Luochio can't come back?" Ren Xiling lowered her head. There seemed to be a rain cloud above her head, exuding a depressing smell. "He said he couldn't come back. Wow, then you'll eat the New Year's Eve dinner alone this year?" These words were like a sharp arrow, instantly making Ren Xiling's face turn pale. When the elevator door opened, Ren Xiling dragged her body in and couldn't even straighten her back. Soon after, in front of the door of the newspaper office, Ren Xiling's waist seemed to be more bent. Under the surprised eyes of everyone, she walked back to her office like a zombie. "Sister Lizzie, did Editor-in-Chief Ren encounter something unpleasant today?" The person who asked was called Yukiko. She asked Lizzie curiously in fluent but accented Chinese. Lizzie looked at the new intern who had just joined the newspaper office for more than a month and suddenly smirked. "Nothing, she was just ruthlessly abandoned by a man." "That's really—" Yukiko covered her mouth in surprise. When she was about to ask more, Ren Xiling suddenly came out of the office. "Did anyone enter my office? Who put the things on my desk?" Ren Xiling asked loudly at this time. Everyone shook their heads. Seeing this, Ren Xiling had to let them continue to work and then turned back to the office. Lizzie stretched and cheered up at this time. "Let's get back to work, Yukiko. Have the photos taken yesterday been exposed to the sun? If not, I'll help you." "Thank you, Sister Lizzie." Yukiko smiled sweetly. "You're so kind to me." Lizzie said it didn't matter. "Maybe it's because I feel a sense of familiarity when I hear your accent." "Accent?" "Nothing, go back to work." Lizzie smiled and then glanced at Ren Xiling's office. She found that she had pulled down the curtains. She was probably sleeping inside now. In fact, there was nothing to do in the newspaper office these 2 days. Everyone was idle. Ren Xiling frowned and looked at the things on her desk. The thermal box. This thing looked like food, but no one admitted to putting it down. This made Ren Xiling very curious. Who would send food to her for no reason? After the lid of the thermal box was opened, a smell of pepper immediately floated out. The hot steam rushed to Ren Xiling's face, which was a little red because of the cold on the way to work, suddenly became warm. "Sweet foam, I haven't eaten this thing for a long time." Ren Xiling couldn't help but want to eat. "Whatever, I'm so hungry. I just ate instant noodles last night. Why do I feel more energetic?" Chapter 1003. Ding ling 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 ling. The old pine door suddenly opened from the inside. Miss Maid walked out of the club with a broom and started her day's work. She started by cleaning the door and wiping the windows. It had been several days since she moved the club back from South America. Miss Maid was familiar with the environment of this town. She knew where the market was and the discount time of the supermarket. It seemed that waiting for the discount day to go to the supermarket had become her daily routine. Money was meaningless to her, but she didn't know when she started to have this habit. It seemed to have started after the arrival of the current owner. The pedestrians on the street were in a hurry to go to work. Yu Yi, on the other hand, was minding her own business in front of the door. She seemed to overlap with the people, but also seemed to be a virtual image. She was here, but also not here. Suddenly, Miss Maid stopped what she was doing and looked to the side. She saw someone standing there in a daze, looking at her and the door of the shop. It was a tall guy with blonde hair and carrying another man on his back, Momo and Jean Eyre. "Aren't you the seniors? Do you want to have a seat inside?" Yu just smiled and said softly, "If it's possible, please allow me to serve you hot scented tea." Momo wanted to refuse, but nodded subconsciously, then followed this beautiful woman into this weird shop. The temperature seemed to become comfortable in an instant. Although it was the middle of winter outside, there was a warmth that seemed to spread from the bottom of her heart and then dispelled the coldness in her body. Momo looked at the teacup handed over by Miss Maid. He hurriedly wiped his hands and took the teacup from Miss Maid's hands. "Excuse me." Momo took a sip of the hot tea and felt more comfortable. He couldn't help opening his mouth, but he swallowed back his words. "What do you want to ask?" Miss Maid stood in front of Momo, putting the tray in front of her, and asked softly. "Senior isn't here?" Momo looked around. This shop seemed to be more spacious than it looked from the outside. Was it so big? "My master is not here for the time being, so I'll take care of this place for the time being." Momo nodded and then smiled bitterly. "I didn't want to bother Senior anymore, but I didn't expect to come to that Senior's place again after a few hours. Has Mr. Momo met my master?" Miss Maid's voice suddenly became louder. Momo nodded and then told him about his encounter with Luochio in the ancestral mansion of Song Clan. "Thanks for your help, Senior. Otherwise, I might have been poisoned to death." "That's unfortunate, Mr. Momo." Miss Maid smiled. "It must be hard to be chased by so many people." Momo forced a smile. Rather than saying it was hard, it was better to say that he was bitterly disappointed. Those guys who wanted to get the edict, their fanatical looks were still lingering in Momo's mind. This was different from the sage-like demeanor he had heard about since he was young. As for transcending worldly affairs, that was even more impossible. "Let's not talk about this anymore." Momo shook his head and sized up this shop, asking curiously, "Your shop seems a bit different? What's the business here?" When he noticed this shop, it seemed that the passers-by didn't notice its existence. A shop with such a unique appearance should attract some attention. "Here." Yu Yi smiled faintly. "This is a place to provide services and sell goods to those who need it." Momo gave a start. "Provide services?" "Yes," Miss Maid said softly. "No matter it's reasonable, unreasonable, possible or impossible, any request can be realized here. The things you want in your heart and the things you can pay for it." Not knowing why, that Senior's marvelous means flashed through Momo's mind. If this was the Senior's shop, then this servant girl should be able to do it. Possible, impossible, inconceivable. Can I also spend money here?" Momo asked subconsciously. "The main thing is that any guest who walks in here can do so," Yu Yi said seriously, "but there's one thing I need to remind Mr. Momo, we only trade with precious things." Momo glanced at Jean-Eyre subconsciously. "Should I buy some help here?" Can I think about it?" Momo suddenly asked. Because at this moment, he had a strange feeling in his heart, like a warning sign, warning him not to speak rashly. "Of course." Miss Maid nodded. "As long as you don't regret it." Momo nodded. He didn't dare to stay here for too long. After drinking a cup of tea, he left with Jean-Eyre. Perhaps it was just an illusion. When he walked out of the shop and didn't buy anything, he suddenly let out a sigh of relief. Find a place to have a rest. This is a town with many ordinary people. Even those guys who lost their minds for the imperial edict have to consider the consequences of messing around in the downtown. A great hermit hid in the city. Yu Yi sent Momo to the door and watched him leave, saying with interest, "Cultivators are really special, they can even resist their desires, but because of this they are more valuable." Miss Maid continued to clean the window in a good mood. Because the owner was not far away from her, she could reach the owner's side in an instant with the current range of the club. And she would go there personally. The old bus jolted to a stop in front of the bus stop. After a while, an unusually large figure rushed out of the bus and ran to the corner of the wall at an extremely fast speed to vomit. Song San looked at this huge figure with disdain. Who could imagine that Songda, who was as strong as the god of war, would get carsick and vomit so violently? This old bus in China smelled like a biological weapon. That was Song Da's explanation. Find a place to have a rest first. Mr. Blind saw that Song Da was unable to move properly, so he could only shake his head and say, All we need to do now is wait. Wait? Song San asked curiously as he supported Songda. At this moment, the blind man casually said, "Since I can divine that my senior brother is here, he can also divine that I am here. Naturally, he will come to find me." Song San was stunned. Could it be that the disciples of the plainclothes path had always schemed against each other? You martial artists can spar every day. Can't we feng shui masters spar? As if he knew what Song San was thinking, Mr. Blind replied indifferently. This scared Song San so much that he immediately shut his mouth. Even though the three brothers usually called him Blind Mister, they were very clear that it was because Mr. Blind was too lazy to be calculative, and they were thick-skinned. "All right then, let's find a hotel to rest. Blind man?" At this moment, Song San's expression suddenly changed because he sensed that someone was quietly approaching him. Song San tried to release his chi to sense, but that person seemed to be faintly discernible, making him unable to lock onto him. Faintly, Song San felt that his heart was beating very fast. He seemed to hear the sound of footsteps. These footsteps seemed to be stepping on the frequency of his heartbeat. No, it should be that these footsteps seemed to be controlling the frequency of his heartbeat. In just a moment, Song San was already drenched in cold sweat and his back was cold. Retract your chi. If you continue to resist, your heart won't be able to take it. Mr. Blind suddenly put his hand on Song San's shoulder and quickly said. At this moment, Song San took a deep breath and slowly withdrew his aura. Only then did the feeling of terror gradually fade away. At the same time, in front of them, a dignified beauty wearing a black dress appeared out of nowhere. This woman with her hair tied up appeared very capable, but she also had an aura that was not easy to get close to. Song San took another deep breath. This was the person who could make him unable to withstand just the sound of her footsteps? Was she the same as Blind? Was she a person of that level? However, this dignified beauty did not look at Song San. Instead, she looked directly at Mr. Blind and asked seriously, "May I ask, are you Taoist priest Qing Xiazi?" "You are?" Mr. Blind frowned. The woman in front of him was faintly emitting a strong magic power fluctuation. He knew that this woman was not old, but it was rare for her to have such a cultivation level. "My surname is Gong." At this time, the dignified woman said respectfully, "It was Representative Lai who asked me to come pick you up. Representative Lai is already waiting for you in a tea house outside the town. Please allow me, Taoist Elder Qing Xiazi." Representative Lai. Mr. Blind frowned again, then his fingers moved slightly. However, Miss Gong had already quickly said, "Representative Lai is the walking successor of the cloth-clothed Tao. He's already one of the representatives of the Tao Association at such a young age." "My senior brother's disciple." Mr. Blind nodded. "Please lead the way. Please follow me." Miss Gong nodded and did not say anything else. She turned and left immediately. Songda and Song San looked at each other. The sickly Songda looked at Mr. Blind and asked, "Blind, is everything all right?" Songda suddenly felt that the land of Kelowna was very dangerous. Not to mention this Miss Gong, the two young masters he and Song San had encountered on the Wudong Mountain not long ago had frightening martial prowess. Mr. Blind said indifferently, "This is Mount Tai. The Tao cultivation world and the demon world will hold an exchange meeting here every 10 years. Almost half of the people from the Tao world and the demon world have gathered here now. Even I am not included. If there is really any danger, do you think it's useful to escape?" At this time, Song San hesitated and suddenly said, "Blind, old Master Song should have already arrived. Do you think something bad will happen to old Master Song since the surroundings of Mount Tai are so scary?" Mr. Blind shook his head and said, "It's all right. The Song family is full of lucky people who can turn misfortune into luck. Moreover, old Master Song has a Ji. Let's go, it's all right." Mr. Blind said indifferently, "You'd better care more about Songda." As a warrior, how could he get carsick? I'm really sorry, Wang? Luo Dance blinked her big eyes and looked at Long Shiruo in her arms. Why in her arms? Because Luo Dance was holding Long Shiruo in her arms and flying in the sky unhurriedly. Long Shiruo, who always felt a huge pressure behind her, frowned and said, "To be specific, it's the spiritual vein that turned into a dragon. It's not a natural dragon. It's a kind of luck dragon. In fact, there was such a spiritual vein under the city where we lived before. Originally, it almost turned into a dragon and gave birth to spiritual wisdom, but unfortunately... Unfortunately what?" Long Shiruo's eyes were a little gloomy and she said casually, "Unfortunately, it's a silly child." "Sister Long?" Long Shiruo shook her head. "It's nothing, it's its own choice." "Well, we're almost there. Let's go down from here. I remember there's a small village nearby. Some people live there, and there's a guy who shouldn't have stayed until now." "Who?" "An emperor. His dragon chi was exhausted, but he was delusional. He tried to use the dragon chi to nourish his soul, hoping that his descendants could find a way to resurrect his soul." Long Shiruo said indifferently, "When I found Wang, his dragon chi was continuously stolen, so he couldn't turn into a dragon. Later, I cut off the arrangement of the feng shui master, so Wang began to gather dragon chi again. But because of this, it was delayed for hundreds of years before he succeeded in turning into a dragon. Unfortunately, he was congenitally deficient in the end." "Ah! How could this emperor be so hateful? Sister Long, didn't you teach him a lesson?" Luo Dance asked angrily at this time. Long Shiruo said helplessly, "Although he's an emperor whose dragon chi is exhausted, he's still a man of heaven and a pioneer of a dynasty. Even if he doesn't have dragon chi, he still has the merit of founding the country and the karmic position between heaven and earth. I can only stop his plan, but I can't extinguish his soul by myself, because it's equal to using my left hand against my right hand. Emperor Shinryu, it's so annoying." "Sister Long, you're also suffering." Luo Dance took out her hand and touched Long Shiruo's head at this time. Long Shiruo rolled her eyes. "Then you should grow up as soon as possible. Maybe you can help in the future." "I'm already trying to grow up," Luo Dance said seriously. Chapter 1004. Not long after, Mr. Blind, Song De, and Song San were led by Miss Gong to a tea-house near a mountain and a river. Because it was the middle of winter and it was close to New Year's Eve, the tea-house was very quiet. Of course, it could also be because it had been booked. Along the way, Song De and Song San chatted with Blind. According to Blind, he had never seen this Lai Kaixing before. However, he knew that his senior brother did have such a disciple who was this generation's orthodox linen clothes disciple. Over the years, Song De and Song San had been asking Blind about the rules of the linen clothes sect. It seemed that not only the most outstanding disciples had the right to be the orthodox linen clothes disciple. Blind's abilities seemed to be slightly better than his senior brother, the previous generation's linen clothes disciple. However, as a feng shui sect, they didn't seem to place much emphasis on combat prowess. As for why the blind man wanted to leave China and live overseas for so long, Song De and the others, as well as old Master Song, had no idea. However, Song De and Song San saw that Blind's return this time seemed to be because of his senior brother's call. In that case, the previous generation's linen clothes disciple seemed to have a good relationship with each other? With many questions in mind, Song De and Song San were shocked to find that they were arranged in another private room in the tea house. They couldn't participate in the meeting between Blind and Lai Kaixing. Taoist Qing Xiazi said that since you two are his followers, you can just wait here. Miss Gong calmly stopped Song De and Song San from protesting. What the f***ck? This blind man is really treating us as his bag carriers. Ignoring the gloominess of Song De and Song San in the private room, in a pavilion in the tea house, Miss Gong led the blind Mr. to Lai Kai-shing, who had a head of white hair. This tea-house was built at the edge of the pool, and this pavilion was built at the center of the pool. It seemed that because of the light snow not long ago, a trace of white frost could be seen on the trees in the distance. Lai Kai-shing was currently brewing tea with delicate movements. Mr. Blind himself also had white hair at a young age and hadn't recovered after so many years. Therefore, when he saw Lai Kai-shing, he knew what Lai Kai-shing had experienced. 99 lifetimes in a single night, experiencing the joys and sorrows of separation and reunion before one's hair turned white. This was an extremely special technique in the cloth-clothes Tao. It didn't really require one to experience 99 lifetimes in a single night. It could only be said that the more lifetimes one experienced, the greater one's achievements would be. "Please take a seat, Uncle Master." Lai Kai-shing lifted his head and smiled. Mr. Blind, on the other hand, frowned. He adjusted the back of his clothes and slowly sat down. He suddenly asked, "You've lived through all 99 lifetimes?" Lai Kai-shing did not seem to be surprised by such a question, so he calmly replied, "A lifetime apart." Mr. Blind nodded. At the same time, he heaved a sigh of relief and said indifferently, "You are stronger than me." Lai Kai-shing was 1 lifetime behind, but Mr. Blind himself was 3 lifetimes behind. After the 90th lifetimes, with each additional lifetime, the difficulty level would increase exponentially. There were only 2 lifetimes between him and Lai Kai-shing, and the gap in their potential was already hard to calculate. The reason why he could easily figure out some of Lai Kai-shing's actual situation was only because he had immersed himself in a large amount of time of experience. Master said that Uncle Master is the most outstanding genius of our cloth-clothes Tao in the past 300 years. Lai Kai-shing elegantly poured a cup of hot tea for Mr. Blind. Mr. Blind, however, did not move and went straight to the point. "When your master came looking for me this time, why didn't he appear himself and instead sent you instead?" Lai Kai-shing said with a serious expression, "Uncle Master doesn't know. Right now I also have no way of knowing where Master went. It was just that a few days ago, I was seized by a sudden impulse and divined a divination. I knew that there would be a person with extremely deep ties to our sect who would appear within the next few days. Now that I think about it carefully, the only person with extremely deep ties to our sect in the world today is Uncle Master Yu. Senior brother is missing?" Mr. Blind frowned. "What's going on? He even left me a message on Mount Wudong. I also calculated that he was in the vicinity of Mount Tai." Lai Kai-shing raised his eyebrows at this moment. What kind of message did Master leave for Uncle Master? Mr. Blind said indifferently, "He just said that he had something important to discuss with me, but I don't know what it is exactly. You also know that the cloth-clothes Tao's disciples all like to guess. We are good at everything except for this. We see people but not their hearts. Everything depends on divination. But we don't know that people are poor and the heavens are impermanent. After all, people's divination can't compare to the heavens' divination. Thank you for your advice." Lai Kai-shing bowed to Mr. Blind at this moment with a sincere attitude. At this moment, Mr. Blind was looking at the sky outside the pool. He suddenly opened his turbid eyes. "This place is filled with demonic aura. The mana waves are mixed and difficult to distinguish. Did something happen at the Punglai gathering this time?" Although Mr. Blind had been living overseas for a long time, he was still someone from Kelowna. He was naturally familiar with the major events that happened once every 10 years between the two worlds. When he was young, he had even followed his master to participate in the Punglai gathering several times. Naturally, he was not unfamiliar with the Punglai gathering. Lai Kai-shing then briefly explained the appearance of the White Jade Edict, how everyone fought over it, and how Shinryu of Kelowna joined forces with the Xianyuan Palace and the Bureau to intervene. Lai Kai-shing sighed and said, "If it weren't for the true dragon this time, I'm afraid the Tao Association wouldn't have been able to suppress it. Even some people in the Tao Association value this edict very much. Such a precious treasure will naturally cause chaos in people's hearts, Mr. Blind said indifferently. They are still humans and have not become immortals. It's precisely because they have not become immortals that they will grab hold of the slightest chance. Lai Kai-shing said softly, cultivating for 100 years only to become immortals. Back then, everyone held on to this hope and chose this path. Mr. Blind shook his head and did not speak. After a long while, Lai Kai-shing wanted to change the cold tea, but Mr. Blind said that it was not necessary. He just drank the cold tea himself. He said indifferently, "It's said that tea cools when people leave. For someone like me who left long ago, this cold tea is just right for me." Lai Kai-shing smiled slightly and did not pour away his cold tea. Instead, he drank with Mr. Blind. He continued, "Martial Uncle has been living overseas for a long time. Now that you have just returned, you won't be able to receive news of my master for a while. Why don't you follow Kai-shing into the Crouching Dragon Villa for a few days?" Mr. Blind did not speak. Lai Kai-shing smiled again. "Our Bai sect always has its own courtyard in the Crouching Dragon Villa. Martial Uncle stayed there before, why don't you revisit this place? Moreover, Kai-shing has many things that I hope to learn from Martial Uncle." Mr. Blind shook his head. "I can't teach you. Perhaps my senior martial brother can't teach you either. Since you have officially become the successor of this generation, it means that you are the rightful sect master of the Bai sect. Since sect master has sincerely invited me, Qing Xiazi will accept." "Martial Uncle, you don't have to do this," Lai Kai-shing quickly said. "However," Mr. Blind said, "strictly speaking, I am just an abandoned disciple." Not long after, Mr. Blind left the pavilion in the middle of the pond. Meanwhile, Miss Gong came to Lai Kai-shing's side. Miss Gong frowned slightly. "I heard that the previous successor of the Bai sect should be Qing Xiazi. Why did Qing Xiazi become an abandoned disciple in the end?" Lai Kai-shing slowly brewed the tea and said slowly, "Some people feel that this identity is a cage with an unbreakable fate. Some people feel that this is an honor that they can't ask for. What about you? What do you think this is?" Miss Gong looked at Lai Kai-shing and asked. "Me?" He smiled and said, "I don't think this is anything. I just want to find out what the missing generation is." Miss Gong was silent for a moment before saying, "Qing Xiazi is a disciple of the Bai sect after all. This time, your master came all the way here to find him. It definitely isn't just for a simple reunion. What do you think?" Lai Kai-shing suddenly stopped. Then, he dipped his finger in some tea and drew something on the stone table. Miss Gong took a look. The trace of the tea looked like the word death. At this moment, Lai Kai-shing was silent. It seemed like he wanted to continue writing, but his finger didn't move for a long time. In the end, he simply erased the word death. Heaven's secrets are still as chaotic as before. Lai Kai-shing sighed. Then, he stood up and looked at the pond water that was so calm that it didn't have any wave. He didn't say anything for a long time. Miss Gong knew that Lai Kai-shing was a person who was full of inspiration. His inspiration was more like a kind of intuition towards the future. Therefore, she didn't dare to disturb Lai Kai-shing's contemplation. After a long time, Lai Kai-shing shook his head and said, "Forget it. The boat has reached the end of the bridge. You should have something else, right?" Miss Gong nodded. "I just received news that a few descendants of the 4 great demon clans have gone missing at the Kuan Pring Villa." "They're all from the 4 great clans?" Lai Kai-shing turned around, seemingly a little surprised. Miss Gong then said, "1 from the Azure Dragon clan, 1 from the White Tiger clan, 2 from the Vermilion Bird clan, and 1 from the Black Tortoise clan." Lai Kai-shing muttered, "What do you think?" Miss Gong said, "Regardless of whether it's the Tao world or the demon world, they secretly sent out many people to fight for the imperial edict this time. Even though the Tao world and the demon world have been quiet for a long time because of the agreement, they still have conflicts in private. It's possible that these missing demons were captured by the people of the Tao world on their way out. Lai Kaixing shook his head and said, "That's not it." Miss Gong was stunned. Then, she frowned. However, her heart moved very quickly. "You mean that no matter what the reason is for these missing demons, this matter will develop into the most direct problem between the Tao world and the demon world?" Lai Kaixing sighed softly. "We're too clear about the distinction between good, evil, demons, and demons." He then laughed bitterly and said, "Send me back to the Crouching Dragon Villa to lie down. The two old men above me will probably not be able to sit still." Miss Gong nodded immediately. In her impression, Luochio was not such a strong person. The strong person here was not in terms of his physique, but his ability to resist the cold. Zhang Qingrui remembered that before the first winter break of Year 1, Luochio had caught a cold once. At the time, he had come to the classroom wearing a thick coat. At the time, he had been in Professor Qin's class. He had probably taken cold medicine, so he had slept for more than an hour before Professor Qin made him copy as punishment. At the time, he should have been just an ordinary person, right? Zhang Qingrui was increasingly curious. What exactly had happened to him to become so extraordinary? Or perhaps the email she had received about her future self was just a joke, an illusion. Song Hauran from the Song family had said that he wanted to go on an adventure and search for the local legend, the child of the dragon god. Zhang Qingrui interpreted this adventure as the curiosity and exploration of the two young people of the Song family. Children who grew up abroad probably had a special kind of curiosity about the green mountains and beautiful rivers in China. China had always had a lot of mysticism, which was interpreted by foreigners. Zhang Qingrui had not planned to go on an adventure at first. However, when she saw that Luochio seemed to be willing to come along, she had unexpectedly agreed. She had mixed feelings about Luochio. Although they were classmates who had a tacit understanding, after that email, Zhang Qingrui now cared more about Luochio. In the past 2 days, Luochio seemed to be her classmate, but Luochio seemed to be a completely different person. "What are you thinking about, Zhang Qingrui?" Song Hauran suddenly appeared behind Zhang Qingrui and poked his head out to ask. Zhang Qingrui was a calm person. At this time, she smiled slightly and said, "I'm thinking, if we can really find the child of the dragon god, what should we do?" Song Hauran blinked and said, "Zhang Qingrui, I didn't expect you to believe in mysticism." Zhang Qingrui said, "Maybe it's because some of my family's businesses are related to mysticism. In fact, there are many things in history that can't be explained. And in many places, aren't there all kinds of legends?" "Legend," Song Ying interrupted. "Isn't it just a rumor that has been spread around? All legends are based on imagination and worship, and then modified by later generations." Zhang Qingrui seemed to have no intention of arguing with Song Ying. She just smiled lightly. "So these legends should be verified one by one. I think it's a very interesting thing." "That's a good idea." Song Hauran laughed and said, "Are you interested in going on an adventure with me in the future?" Zhang Qingrui smiled and said nothing. The negotiation between her and her grandmother hadn't reached a conclusion yet. It was hard to say whether she would be a bird in a cage or a free bird in the future. How could she look forward to going on an adventure so easily? The wind in the mountain stream suddenly became stronger. Zhang Qingrui couldn't help shivering. She found that the clothes she wore were a little too small. "Put it on." Chapter 1005. She was a little surprised, but not surprised. If it was Luochio, he seemed to be the kind of person who would do such a thing. The moment she put on the warm coat, Zhang Qingrui suddenly remembered something that happened a long time ago. It was a rainy day after school. Because she didn't want too many people to know about her family background, Zhang Qingrui insisted on not letting her family send her to school, but the sudden rainy day made her extremely distressed. Just like this time, the umbrella suddenly appeared on her head. "Take it." Luochio was a man of few words. Even if there were only him and her in the class, Zhang Qingrui could still recognize his voice. Probably because he was a man of few words, once he spoke, he would always leave a deep impression on others. She instinctively wanted to say no, or thought that after Luocio gave her the umbrella, he would bravely say that she was a boy and was not afraid of the rain, and then heroically leave in the rain. But he didn't, because Luocio then took out another umbrella from his bag, nodded and left with the umbrella, leaving Zhang Qingrui standing under the eaves with the umbrella in her hand. It was the same this time. The coat was taken from Luocio's backpack, not taken off by him. Zhang Qingrui couldn't help laughing. She gently clenched her small hands and pressed them against her lips, laughing out loud. She often smiled and was elegant and generous. She always gave people the impression that it was her bearing and elegance that made people feel relaxed and happy. However, it wasn't like this. It was like a budding flower that left an unforgettable impression. "What's wrong?" Looking at this different smile, Luocio asked curiously. Zhang Qingrui just shook her head, blinking her eyes. "Nothing, I just remembered some interesting things in the past." "Interesting memories?" Luocio nodded. "They are always beautiful things." I suddenly feel so cold too. What should I do?" At this time, Song Haoran said with a smile, "And I don't know why, but I suddenly feel a chill coming from behind." "Behind?" Zhang Qingrui glanced over and saw Song Ying standing behind Song Haoran. Zhang Qingrui was a delicate person, at least, those who knew her thought so. In an instant she thought of many things. However, Luocio said, "You shouldn't be cold. It won't affect you even if you get colder. But Song Ying should need it." With that said, Luocio took out a coat from his backpack and said, "You can take this first and put it on when you need it. I can see that your body is stronger than Zhang Qingrui's." One was a young lady who had been carefully nurtured, while the other was an elite and well-trained descendant of an aristocratic family. There was indeed a gap in some aspect. "Really? Are you used to taking so many clothes out?" Song Haoran looked at Luocio's backpack in surprise, and couldn't help sighing in his heart. It was really difficult to trick him. But who would take so many clothes out for no reason? It was as if he had prepared for something in advance. "You're welcome," Song Ying said indifferently. "I'm still quite strong. Call me if you need it." Luocio didn't say too much, folding the coat and putting it back into his backpack. In fact, they had been traveling for a while, and now they could hear the sound of a waterfall. The legendary pool should not be far away. They found an abandoned pavilion and sat down. This pavilion should be built by the people of Song Village in the old days. It even had a name, Gazing Dragon Pavilion. At this time, Luocio took out several bottles of water from his backpack and distributed them to the companions. "I always feel that little Luocio is the kind of person who knows how to take care of others." Song Haoran smiled. "It's just for my convenience," Luocio said casually. Song Haoran laughed. Then, he rolled his eyes and began to talk about his adventures in the past. Song Ying had heard many of these stories. At this time, she was bored and yawned. She rested her chin on her hand and looked into the distance, thinking about something. Zhang Qingrui, on the other hand, was fascinated by the story. Luocio remembered what she had said on the prairie. She said that she hoped to be more free, and that she could explore and become an explorer. Zhang Qingrui's fascinated appearance was a little different from her image of a young lady from a noble family. This was her original color. Song Haoran was like the noon sun, burning passionately. Zhang Qingrui was like the bright moonlight, but Song Ying was richer, like the Milky Way. In the black and white world, there seemed to be a change between day and night. Luocio didn't have much time left. He really hoped that this kind of time could be longer. As he was thinking, the person in front of him disappeared in a flash. Song Haoran's adventure stories had just reached the exciting part. Luocio looked around the pavilion, and found that there was some mist around. The mist spread in the air, and some water vapor began to blow on his face. It was a real touch. The mist gradually thickened, and finally, The surroundings turned into a vast expanse of white. Outside the pavilion, there seemed to be something flashing past. A long shadow, like a fish in the water, swam around the pavilion in the mist. Luocio looked at the water bottle on the stone table, and showed a thoughtful expression. After a while, a long sound suddenly came from the mist. It sounded like a siren, but slightly different, and it gradually went away, but the mist didn't disperse. Look! Luocio moved his eyes, which was the direction where the shadow disappeared in the mist. So Luocio suddenly stood up and muttered, "Happy time flies." He walked into the mist. It was normal to have mist in the mountain stream. It was often seen that the mist in the mountains was like a fairyland, which was intoxicating. Of course, if one was in it, it would be a different feeling. Release some of your monster power. I have taught you how to strengthen your senses. I said it's not like this. You ate so much, but your head didn't swell. Where did it go? I'm sorry, Sister Long. I'll try my best. Luo Dance was distressingly using the monster power that skyrocketed after waking up not long ago to sense the way around. Since Long Shirua mentioned it, they encountered the mist and lost their way. The little girl Long Shirua only had knowledge, but no power. Of course, if she was willing to use Chi-Chi Kamaya's secret treasure, she could summon a doppelganger with some power, but she had to bleed every time. So if it wasn't necessary, Long Shirua didn't intend to bleed herself. But Sister Long, this mist seems a bit strange? Luo Dance blinked, looking at Long Shirua, who was blurred in her sight, and asked, "Yes?" Long Shirua nodded at this time, biting her fingers and muttering, "Natural changes won't happen so fast, and it's not raining today, and it's just past noon. I'm afraid it's the problem of Wang." "You mean it's caused by the spiritual vein that turned into a dragon?" Long Shirua said seriously. "As I said, Wang was born with a congenital deficiency, and its intelligence was not complete. Although I managed to help it go through the process of transforming into a dragon, the aftereffects haven't been properly resolved. So, in order to help it recover, I made a seal here at its birthplace. I hope it can continue to borrow the power of the spirit pulse to help Wang recover some of the deficiencies it had before it was born. Its seal might have loosened, and this should be caused by Wang's power." "Sister Long, will your seal be loosened?" In the eyes of the little butterfly monster, Long Shirua was almost the most powerful one. After all, this was the knowledge that her deceased grandpa tree monster instilled in her when she was young. Of course, later the little butterfly monster knew that there was another powerful sister Suzy Juan, and then there was the more powerful boss. Sister Long would get angry every time she mentioned boss. Long Shirua shook her head, saying with uncertainty, "It's hard to say. The 12 dragon veins in Kelowna have become very strange recently. I tried to investigate it some time ago, but then something happened, so I gave up temporarily. Now I can't continue the investigation. As for the seal I made, it should be fine, but we can't rule out the possibility of external forces. Even an iron pillar can be ground into a needle. Dripping water can penetrate a stone. There's no wall in the world that can't be broken." Long Shirua took out a cigarette and lit it out of habit. It was probably because she was upset and irritated by the topic. But at this time, she suddenly found that there was no one around her. In the thick fog, she couldn't even see her own fingers. "Agile? Agile?" Long Shirua frowned and called twice, but there was no trace of the little butterfly monster. "This idiot!" Long Shirua angrily threw the cigarette in her hand on the ground and stamped it out. She hurriedly walked into the depths of the fog. Although she couldn't see the road, she could roughly feel the direction. Long Shirua didn't run far before she suddenly bumped into something. It didn't hurt, but it was obvious that with her current figure, she couldn't move at all. Long Shirua could only directly fall back. In front of her was a tall black shadow. At the same time, Long Shirua felt very uneasy in her heart. These days, she had this kind of uneasiness in her heart, and at this moment this kind of uneasiness directly rose to the maximum, making her hair stand up as if directly attracted by static electricity, and her scalp also had a kind of numbness. Be careful. At the same time, such a voice came. Long Shirua felt that at the moment when she was about to fall, she was grabbed by the arm, and then pulled forward. She once again bumped into the figure in the fog. The moment their bodies touched, that kind of rising uneasiness suddenly made Long Shirua cry out in alarm. It had nothing to do with willpower, strength, or weakness. She resisted and repelled from the bottom of her heart as if she saw her natural enemy. "Are you okay?" At this moment, Long Shirua suddenly had an impulse to cover her ears, because at this moment she had already recognized the owner of this voice, the initiator of her current appearance. The club's boss, a man that even Shinryu, who was undefeated in Kelowna, couldn't resist as long as he stood on the land of Kelowna. Why was he here? You? Why are you here? Almost at the same time, Long Shirua's thoughts and instincts appeared almost at the same time. She quickly broke free from the opponent's hand and slightly retreated a little bit. At the same time, without saying anything, she took out Chichikamaya's secret treasure and prepared for the worst. Of course, she knew that this man would not take the initiative to attack people. Speaking of which, I'm also surprised that Miss Long is here. Suddenly, there was a whirlwind around the figure, the fog was swept away by the airflow, and finally, a small empty space appeared around the two of them. Luocha was indeed surprised to see Long Shirua here, so he asked curiously, "I just saw that you seemed a little anxious. Did something happen?" "No. Nothing happened," Long Shirua decisively denied and said quite firmly, "I don't need any services or help. I'm fine, thank you." Luocha was startled, and then chuckled, "I'm on holiday these few days, so I don't have any business here. So even if it's just a little help, there won't be any additional requests, please don't worry." Holiday? The boss can take a holiday? This question only stayed in Long Shirua's mind for 3 seconds, and she directly thought that it was very likely to be a trap. No, this was probably a trap. This guy had taken a fancy to her Shinryu's blood essence, and was determined to squeeze her dry. "I don't need any help." Long Shirua quietly adjusted her breathing, but she felt that it was definitely unusual for this man to appear here, so she frowned and said, "But you? Why are you so free to come to this remote place for sightseeing?" "A little." Luocha smiled and said, "The original motive of this trip was to sightsee." Who would believe that? Long Shirua wanted to get rid of this man as soon as possible. She felt that if she stayed a little longer, she would lose the vitality that she had recovered with great difficulty. But something happened on the way. However, just as Long Shirua was thinking too much, Luocha said directly, "The nearby area should be a little strange because of some kind of power disorder. This should be the power of Wang, right? It feels very similar to the power of the spiritual vein in our city, but there are some differences." Miss Long, do you know what happened?" Long Shirua was a little surprised. "There's something you don't know?" "Of course," Luocha said matter-of-factly. "After all, I'm not as old as Miss Long, so naturally I'm lacking in knowledge." The main reason was that if he could get the answer without having to buy the information himself, Luocha was very willing to learn and ask more. But Long Shirua frowned at this time and remained silent. "You're the old bastard. I'm not even 2,000 years old this year." Yin 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 yin. Chapter 1006. Long Shirua quickly recovered, or it could be said that she temporarily overcame some kind of fear that she didn't even want to admit. The power of Wang was obviously the key to this sudden thick fog. Even so, Luo Dance could not disappear in front of him. It could only mean that the leakage of the power of Wang would cause more effects. Because it was born from the spirit vein of this mountain range, the closer it was to the spirit vein's true acupoint, the stronger the gaze ability would be. Therefore, it was not impossible for it to cause a part of the space to distort. Now, it was obviously impossible for him to solve such a problem. However, if he let the power of Wang leak out, it was hard to estimate the impact it would bring back. What's more, it happened to be the Penglai meeting that was held once every 10 years. The heroes of the Tao Association and the Demon Association would gather. It was inevitable that they would find the strangeness of this place. A spiritual vein that could turn into a dragon, and Wang, who had successfully turned into a dragon, were irresistible temptations for both the Tao world and the demons. After weighing the pros and cons in her heart, Long Shirua helplessly found that, with the help of the man in front of her, it might be the best choice to settle this matter. However, could she believe him when he said that he was on vacation? Long Shirua suddenly remembered that Luo Dance would occasionally talk about Luochio. This little butterfly would occasionally say that her boss was very kind and took good care of her. I don't know what happened to Wang for the time being. Long Shirua looked at Luochio at this time and suddenly said, I can't do anything now. However, Luo Dance just disappeared in front of me. That child also came? Luochio was stunned and remembered that he had not seen Luo Dance for a short time. Long Shirua nodded at this time and rolled her eyes. Otherwise, how do you think I came to this place with my current appearance? Luochio smiled and pretended that he didn't hear the protest and dissatisfaction in Long Shirua's words. He just said indifferently, I know. Let's find that child first. Long Shirua quickly pulled her sleeves a little longer. Last time when she was in the gymnasium, a large amount of blood was drained from her wrist. Let's go. Luochio smiled and held Long Shirua's hand. What are you doing? Long Shirua shouted in dissatisfaction. Luochio said directly, It'll be more troublesome if you lose them too. That way, it won't be easy to get separated, right? In addition, it was also to save energy. After all, dispelling this thick fog will take some effort. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I'll endure it for now. Long Shirua gritted her teeth, but directly pulled her sleeves over her hand and reluctantly let Luochio hold her hand through her clothes. Luochio didn't care and walked in front, but slowed down his pace. He suddenly said, If you want to change back, just say the word. What? Long Shirua was stunned and subconsciously raised her head to look at Luochio's back. Just say the word. Just say the word, but at the same time, it meant that she lowered her head. It meant that she was wrong. She lowered her head and followed Luochio's footsteps silently. It was very difficult for her to say the word. Let's find Pianxian first, Long Shirua slowly said. That child can't find her, so she's probably panicking now. Miss Long is actually very kind to people. Luochio smiled. About that matter, I apologize to you again. For me, there's no way to replace her. Long Shirua slightly opened her mouth. You who have everything? For Miss Long. Luochio said softly, as Kelowna Shinryu, you also have everything. Had everything. Once. Suddenly, Long Shirua found that this guy's palm was warm from the beginning even though there was a thick layer of clothes between them. A long time ago, she seemed to have been held by someone like this. It was also like this that she could only see his tall back when she raised her head. By the way, Miss Long, did you eat the red dates I sent you at Christmas? I heard from Yu Yi that it's a specialty of a certain place, and it's very good for nourishing blood. If you like it, I can bring you more later. Go away! Roar! Long Shirua was super fierce. Wudong, in a bamboo forest on a mountain peak. Mo Xiaofei was skillfully operating the mobile phone while watching Zhuifeng waving his fist at a huge rock. Nowadays, it wasn't difficult for Mo Xiaofei to operate the mobile phone. It could even be said that he had mastered all the functions except that he didn't try to call the number in the so-called contact list. He wasn't interested in mobile games, and he really didn't understand why people would be attracted to some 2D characters on the mobile phone. Wasn't the card pool something to cheat money? What a sad guy. Mo Xiaofei liked to use the Baidu that Zhuifeng said to know everything. The historical changes of Kelowna in the past 5,000 years. He sighed again for the vicissitudes of life. Suddenly, the sound of Juefeng waving his fist at the huge rock stopped. Emo Xiaofei frowned and looked over, only to see that Juefeng's hands were hanging down naturally and his eyes were closed. Suddenly, Juefeng moved and punched again. The speed of the fist was not fast, even a little slow. When the fist touched the huge rock, there was no movement. Juefeng's fist was pressed against the huge rock. Soon after, Juefeng opened his eyes and slowly exhaled. At the same time, the huge rock in front of him turned into dust and fell to the ground. The huge rock directly turned into a pile of dirt. Emo Xiaofei opened his mouth in surprise. It was only 2 days, but this Juefeng had learned the first move of his son of heaven martial art Huangji World Shocking Fist. This child, no, this little monster, could it be that she was also a martial arts genius? Big brother! Juefeng turned his face with excitement at this time. Emo Xiaofei nodded, not bad. Juefeng, take a rest first, and at the same time, experience the feeling of punching just now. When you can execute this punch instinctively, you can be considered to have truly learned this fist technique. Juefeng sat cross-legged without saying anything. This was mainly to learn from Emo Xiaofei. Seeing that Juefeng was obedient, Emo Xiaofei began to read the history of the People's Republic that he had just checked with his mobile phone. Well, this person surnamed Mao is indeed a rare talent. But at this time, Juefeng suddenly opened his eyes and asked, "By the way, big brother, are we still going to find the people of the Cotton Sect?" Cotton Sect? Emo Xiaofei frowned subconsciously. Juefeng felt that it was necessary for him to remind brother Emo Xiaofei. Perhaps he could help him change back to his original appearance? Yeah, didn't you say you were going to find the Cotton Sect Taoist? Juefeng shared his limited information. You said something about the Punglai Convention on Mount Tai. Mount Tai. Emo Xiaofei suddenly became silent and looked into the distance, whispering, Fengchan. Gradually, he fell into deep thought. Big brother? Big brother? Juefeng. Suddenly, Emo Xiaofei called in a deep voice. This made Juefeng straighten his back subconsciously. Because in these 2 days, he felt that brother Emo Xiaofei was too dignified when he was serious, making him instinctively cautious. Go to Mount Tai with me. Oh, okay. Wind-chasing wolf nodded. Then, do you still want me to ride you and fly there? Don't worry, I won't lead you the wrong way this time. How dare you? How dare you ride on me? I'm sorry. Humph. If it weren't for your loyalty, I would have sentenced you to death for what you said just now. Emo Xiaofei stood up, flicking his sleeves and leaving. Big brother doesn't seem to be easy to talk to now. Juefeng sighed and had to chase after him. However, Juefeng's heart was moved. He walked 2 steps quickly and then leaned forward. In an instant, Juefeng's body shape changed dramatically. In just a moment, he turned from a teenager into a giant gray wolf. Big brother, you can ride me. Emo Xiaofei frowned. However, seeing that Juefeng's giant gray wolf was quite impressive, his frown gradually loosened and he said indifferently, No need, there's a tool called the bullet train in modern times. I want to ride it. Juefeng lowered his head and said, But we don't have enough money, big brother, don't worry. Emo Xiaofei said indifferently, I found some modern coins in the bamboo hut. They should be left behind by the evil man who wanted to harm me. Just take them. Big brother, when did you rummage through other people's cabinets? After leaving the senior's shop, Momo took Jean-Eyre to find a relatively ordinary local guesthouse for a temporary rest. The senior said Jean-Eyre would wake up, so Momo planned to wait for Jean-Eyre to wake up by himself. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient to take Jean-Eyre along the way. The proprietress of the guesthouse looked nice. Momo paid some money and moved in directly. However, the way she looked at him was somewhat strange, which made Momo a little confused. He had originally thought that the lady boss might be a spy for some fellows in the Tao Association, so he had secretly investigated her. However, he discovered that the lady boss was indeed an ordinary person. Furthermore, she liked to look at handsome men and the unsightly things of handsome men. Only then did he realize what was the lady boss's strange gaze. There would always be times when life was not going well. A peaceful heart would be able to get over it. He remembered that this was what his teacher Changha taught him when he was a child. So many years had passed, Momo didn't know how much he had learned and how much he had understood. For the current him, he felt quite disheartened. He felt that the immortal path in his imagination wasn't so beautiful. At noon, Momo declined the proprietress's invitation for lunch. He planned to go out to find something to eat and inquire about the Punglai meeting of Mount Tai. Although he was doubtful whether he could get anything in such a small place, he thought it was better than waiting for death. He quickly borrowed a set of clothes from the proprietress and went out. After eating something outside, Momo wandered around the small town but didn't find any valuable information. He planned to go to a paper shop in the small town to replenish his equipment. Even though the talismans used by the Celestial Master sect were specially made and every step had strict requirements, in this case, some inferior or even useless items were better than empty-handed for Momo. His luggage was still in the Crouching Dragon Mountain Villa, and he had used up all the items he usually carried during the escape. Now, he only had a black wooden sword of unknown origin, and not even a piece of white slate equipment. However, he soon stopped at the alley beside the paper shop. This was because he sensed a faintly discernible demonic aura nearby. It seemed like a demonic beast had been here before. Momo was suddenly startled. He was the target of the Tao and demon world, so they would naturally try to find him. Therefore, he might have gone to the paper shop to replenish his equipment. He was afraid that they had already predicted that he would go to the paper shop to replenish his equipment. He was afraid that once he appeared in front of the paper shop, he would attract the attention of the demons. He didn't know if there were people from the Tao world hiding nearby. Momo sighed and had to retreat, giving up the idea of replenishing his charms. However, at this moment, he suddenly smelled a faint smell of blood. There seemed to be a fight. Momo frowned and thought to himself, could the Tao and demon world be fighting secretly? After all, Momo had seen the Tao and demon world fighting more than once during his escape. In fact, if the two sides weren't on bad terms, Momo couldn't find a chance to escape several times. In this case, he might be able to find out some useful information. Momo weighed the pros and cons in his heart and felt that it was necessary for him to know more about the Crouching Dragon Villa, the Koan Pung Villa and the land administration of the special country so that he could make better plans for the future. Therefore, he quietly followed the faint smell of blood. Puff. In a dark alley, Momo heard such a sound and saw such a scene at the same time. A figure fell to the ground, and the walls on both sides of the alley were splashed with blood. At this time, a girl with a painting tube on her back was holding a strange long knife in her hand, slowly stabbing it into the body of the fallen figure on the ground. It was a demon. After it died, its original appearance was clearly revealed. It seemed to be a demon of the White Tiger clan. At this moment, a gray ball of light slowly flew out from the corpse of the White Tiger clan member, and then flew into a box in the girl's hand. The Celestial Master sect didn't lack opportunities to deal with ghosts. Almost instantly, Momo knew that the thing that flew out was probably the soul of the White Tiger clan demon. As for the girl with the long saber in front of him, at this moment, she slowly turned her face. There were still 2 drops of blood on her beautiful cheeks, but she blew out a fist-sized pink bubble from her lip. "Pa!" The bubble suddenly burst and Momo saw the girl's appearance clearly. She was the mysterious white-haired girl who stole his things in the Crouching Dragon Villa. Oh, the pocket money is here again. Chapter 1007. Momo felt a strange sense of oppression, which reminded him of the battle with the White Tiger young master, Huang Baifu. This seemingly weak girl in front of him. This girl who looked even younger than him was actually able to compare to the White Tiger young master, Huang Baifu? Momo nervously clasped the strange black wooden sword given to him by Xiao Xingma, the master of Ghost City. This was the only equipment he had. Without talismans, Heaven Master Taoism lost half of its fighting power. But why is this white-haired girl here? Momo's memory of this white-haired girl stopped at the time before the battle with Huang Baifu. At that time, he even asked Captain Ling Feng of the administration to investigate the theft. Unfortunately, he fainted after the battle with Huang Baifu. When he woke up, he immediately participated in the exploration of the mysterious cave residence. Later, Jean Eyre got the imperial order by chance and escaped with Jean Eyre, which made Momo almost forget about the theft. The two worlds of monsters and Taoists have a written rule that no one is allowed to kill each other. How dare you break the agreement? No matter what, Momo calmed down and tried to test this white-haired girl's words. Oh? What agreement are you talking about? The white-haired girl chewed the bubble gum in her mouth while saying indifferently, but it has nothing to do with me, I'm not one of them. That strange long saber was dragging on the ground, making the sound of grinding. Momo broke out in a cold sweat. At his level of Taoist, his perception of the environment and danger had long surpassed the scope of ordinary people. At this moment, Momo sensed that there was nowhere to escape, as if this space had been completely locked by countless terrifying auras. It was like an icicle shot out from the ground, completely confining him on the spot, making Momo feel a bone-piercing chill. The white-haired girl's smile became brighter. But at this moment, Momo let out a low roar. His vigorous Fa-Li instantly broke out of his body and pushed away this chilling intent. He held the mysterious wooden sword wrapped in cloth with one hand, slowly breathing in and out. Oh, it's much better than the big white cat, it should be worth a lot. The white-haired girl slightly raised the corner of her mouth. The atmosphere was tense. Unexpectedly, the white-haired girl's nose moved as if she smelled something. Instantly, the pressure that made Momo extremely nervous disappeared. Momo didn't know how to react. He saw this sweet-looking but cruel white-haired girl suddenly approached him, standing on her heels and sniffing towards him. Is this girl a cat? What a familiar perfume smell! The white-haired girl frowned at this time, and then she seemed to realize something. Did you just see a very scary woman? Scary woman. Momo looked at the white-haired girl unconsciously. He didn't know why her attitude changed 180 degrees. But if she was a scary woman, wasn't she one? The white-haired girl said, the one with golden hair, the one with a smile on her face. The white-haired girl is the maid in Seniors. You know the senior? Momo was startled, blurting out, and that young lady? You call me senior? The white-haired girl narrowed her eyes, looking at Momo from head to toe, suddenly asking, Are you from the shop? Momo shook his head. The white-haired girl asked again, Have you bought anything from the shop? Momo shook his head again. The white-haired girl suddenly rolled her eyes and said with a smile, I say, are you interested in making money with me? Let's team up and fight? There's a lot of money around here. I'm hungry, let's go for a drink. The white-haired girl waved her long saber, causing a gust of wind to sweep through the dark alley. Then, she waved her long saber again, shooting it into the painting tube hanging on her back. Then, she walked out of the dark alley. Wait. Momo hurriedly put away his wooden sword and chased after her. This weird girl seems to know a lot about Senior. However, he suddenly turned around to look at the corpse of the white tiger and frowned. Eventually, he gave up the idea of dealing with the corpse. There should be other monsters nearby, they will find this place soon. I'd better leave this matter to the Monster Association and the Administration Bureau. I'm still a public enemy, why should I get involved in this mess? He told himself this, seeing injustice on the road. Maybe I'm just too naive. So he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, finally catching up with the white-haired girl. Not long after, two shadows flashed in the dark alley. The black shadow quickly arrived at the side of the White Tiger Clan's corpse. The appearance of the two shadows gradually became clearer. One of them was a man in his 30s wearing a black suit, while the other was a bearded man who was only wearing a vest even in the cold weather. They came from different races. The man in the suit was a pure human, but he came from an ancient sect called Yunhui. As for the bearded man, he came from the greedy clan on the plateau and liked to be called Old Wolf. Even so, they both belonged to a special department, the Special State Land Administration Bureau. They were on duty nearby. Then, they felt some fluctuations of demon power and a strange aura, so they dared to come here, but they were obviously too late. It's actually the White Tiger tribe. Yunhui frowned as he surveyed the scene. As for Old Wolf, he lay on the ground and sniffed. Then, he shook his head and stood up. No, there's no smell. It seems that the murderer is very cautious. Yunhui said solemnly, monsters have been disappearing for the past few days. Just yesterday, we received news of people disappearing in the Tao world. Today, we found a corpse. Old Wolf, what do you think? Old Wolf muttered, those who went missing have not been found. They must be dead. And this corpse, I'm afraid it's done by the same person, but we don't know what his purpose is. Let's inform Captain Ling about this first. Yunhui nodded. I'll set up a barrier later to prevent people from walking in and finding out. It'll cause panic. Call the disposal team to clean up the corpse. Okay. Old Wolf picked up the phone. Yunhui directly reported this to Captain Ling Feng, who was guarding the Crouching Dragon Villa. After waiting for a while, the department's exclusive disposal team arrived and started to clean up the murder scene. At this moment, Old Wolf was leaning against the wall in boredom, smoking a big opium pipe. Yunhui walked over and suddenly asked, do you want to go to the Kuanping Villa on the way after work? Old Wolf glanced at Yunhui. Yunhui smiled and said, the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan is here. Don't you want to go and meet him? Although we're serving in the Land Administration Bureau, because of the agreement, we all came from the same place, right? We'll see. Old Wolf shook his head and said calmly, actually, there's nothing to see. If it's possible, I'll apply to stay after this term ends. Ha! Yunhui opened his mouth in surprise, but did not say anything. Yunhui and Old Wolf only left after the cleanup team had cleaned up the scene. Mr. Blind had not stepped into the Crouching Dragon Villa for many years. He remembered that when he first came, the Crouching Dragon Villa did not have the current rules. Before that, there was no such thing as the Crouching Dragon Villa. There were only a few grass huts nearby, built by the Taoists who came to participate in the conference. At that time, he was just a little brother in the sect. Since the blind man walked into the courtyard that was specially prepared for the cotton clothing path with some emotions. He had only spent a cup of tea with Lai Kaixing, but he already felt that this person was extraordinary. He wondered if his senior brother had passed the heavenly heart to Lai Kaixing. In reality, the cloth-clothed Tao had two great abilities passed down, the heavenly eye that could see through illusions, as well as the higher-level heavenly heart. Heavenly heart wasn't something that could be grasped purely through cultivation. Strictly speaking, heavenly heart was an inanimate object, something that could only be seen from the previous generation to the next generation. His senior brother had inherited heavenly heart from the previous generation's sect master. The room here has been cleaned up, Miss Gong said politely. Daoist Qing Xiazi, if you need anything, please let me know. Also, I've arranged for your 2 followers to stay in the room next door. However, I hope you can restrain them a little. After all, these 2 are not considered people here. It's too difficult to enter the Tao through martial arts. Martial Emperor Xiang Faji entered the Tao through martial arts. Why are you looking down on martial artists, Miss Gong? Mr. Blind said calmly. Miss Gong said calmly, it's because of this that we understand how difficult it is. Mr. Blind looked at Miss Gong and did not speak for a long time. She did not have any intention of avoiding him. Finally, Mr. Blind nodded. I understand. I'll warn them not to wander around. Then, I won't disturb you. Miss Gong nodded and was about to leave. Mr. Blind suddenly asked, "In the Tao Association, other than Lai Kai-shing, who else is there? I haven't been back for a long time. I don't know how things are going." This was not something that needed to be kept a secret. Hence, Miss Gong said directly, "The association's president is still Kunlun's 100 Tribulations Taoist. The vice president is Chuanjin's Sex Taoist Huanyang. The other vice president is Lai Caixing's representative. The other members in the main seat have not changed in the past 30 years. You should know, so I won't go into details." Mr. Blind nodded. "Yes, they're all old acquaintances. Go ahead and do your work. I won't nag you any more." Miss Gong left respectfully. However, the moment she went out, she saw an old man with white eyebrows standing in front of the courtyard. "Little girl Gong, you're here too." The old man with white eyebrows, 100 Tribulations Taoist's voice was unusually slow. "President, you're here." Miss Gong looked at the old man with white eyebrows in shock. He was the current president of the Kelowna Tao Association. No one knew his age, and he was known as the evergreen tree of the Tao world. He was Kunlun's 100 Tribulations Taoist. He. It's nothing. An old friend is here, so I wanted to say hello. That's why I came over. 100 Tribulations Taoist looked slow. Miss Gong was slightly stunned. Then, she nodded. "In that case, I won't disturb you." She did not choose to stay. Instead, she wisely chose to leave. Seeing Miss Gong leave 100 Tribulation Taoist, Mr. Blind slowly walked out. Mr. Blind bowed to 100 Tribulations Taoist. "Greetings, Mr. 100 Tribulations." He. "Qing Xiazi, long time no see." 100 Tribulations Taoist walked slowly into the courtyard with his hands behind his back and his back hunched. He looked old and senile. Mr. Blind walked slowly behind 100 Tribulations Taoist. 100 Tribulations Taoist did not enter the house. Instead, he stopped under a tree in the courtyard and raised his head. It was an old parasol tree. He suddenly said, "Has this tree grown taller?" "I can't see it." Mr. Blind shook his head. 100 Tribulations Taoist heaved a sigh of relief. He glanced at Mr. Blind with a smile and said slowly, "You can't see it or you don't want to see it at all?" Mr. Blind said indifferently, "It's better not to see it." 100 Tribulations Taoist chuckled. "Well, since I'm here, why don't you invite me in for some tea? By the way, tell me about the scenery overseas. I haven't been there for hundreds of years. There are some anecdotes. If you don't feel bored, you can listen to them." I'm not bored. 100 Tribulations Taoist slowly opened an eye under his thick eyebrows. He looked at Mr. Blind and said happily, "I'm just too bored. That's why I want to find someone to talk to. Day after day, I finally realized that living a long life isn't a good thing." "Isn't it good to live a long life?" Mr. Blind said with a smile. 100 Tribulations Taoist slowly opened an eye again. "When you live a long life, you want to live a longer life. When you live a longer life, you want to live a longer life. Qing Xiazi, how long do you think our lives can be? Can it be longer than the sky? I'm afraid only you know that." Mr. Blind smiled indifferently. Chapter 1008. In the cave, the fire elongated people's shadows. The airflow here wasn't strong and the fire wasn't swaying, but the shadows were swaying, and there were some whining sounds. Those were the whining sounds of goats. Suddenly, a person raised her head. It was Jessica. Her lips were stained with blood, and at the same time, her 2 rows of teeth had become sharp. Su Zijuan, who was beside her, also raised her head, but Su Zijuan was sucking the blood of a woman. This woman was also wearing a rather special combat suit. Jessica, who was born in Paradise Island, knew that this was the combat suit of the guards of Paradise Island. A few hours ago, Su Zijuan once again easily destroyed a branch base of the club, and then calmly left with the loot. Jessica wiped the blood on her lips and closed her fangs slowly. Looking at Su Zijuan, who was enjoying her lunch, she felt that it was unreal. About a month ago, when she was on the brink of death, it was this girl who seemed to be only 13 or 14 years old who saved her and gave her the power of immortality, turning her into a terrifying vampire. But Su Zijuan insisted that she wasn't a vampire. Jessica didn't intend to argue with Su Zijuan. Because she had absorbed the blood of Su Zijuan, who called herself Ba, she had a sense of fear in her mind all the time. That feeling was similar to the time when she had to obey the order of Paradise Island. She was afraid and had to surrender. But Jessica didn't care about it. What she needed was power, power that could destroy Paradise Island. She had exchanged for power once, but it wasn't strong enough. Destroying a branch base was her limit. But there were 12 powerful immortal generals in Paradise Island. Kuk was one of the 12 immortal generals. Her thunder power was like a child's fist in front of him. But Su Zijuan was different. She at least had the power to fight against the 12 immortal generals. And the most important point was that Su Zijuan obviously held a grudge against the club. From the fact that she had destroyed 7 branches of the club this month, it was clear that Su Zijuan was very dissatisfied with the club. At this moment, Su Zijuan stopped eating. Jessica took out a clean handkerchief and came to Su Zijuan, wiping her mouth carefully. Undoubtedly, this young girl had become her master. For example, the cleaning work was one of Su Zijuan's requirements. Human blood contains essence, energy, and spirit. This is the best tonic for you right now. Su Zijuan glanced at the dying goat that Jessica had eaten, saying indifferently, "If you don't give up the human part, you'll never get the power to take revenge." Jessica didn't speak, just wiping Su Zijuan's mouth carefully. If she gave up the human part, would she have to give up her memories and concerns as a human? This was a question that Jessica hadn't asked. Seeing that Jessica didn't answer, Su Zijuan heaved a sigh of dissatisfaction, saying, "How many branches of the club are there in this country?" Jessica answered, "There's none left. All the branches of the club in this country have been destroyed by you this month. I'm afraid it's a very difficult thing for the club to deal with. They've never encountered such a thing before." Su Zijuan snorted, "Serves them right. They didn't stay in their own territory, but stepped over the boundary and plotted against me. They're courting death." Jessica said, "Next we can go to Slovakia or Austria. But if we continue to destroy their branches like this, I'm afraid the club will take action. God generals are terrifying, but above them are the 26 creator seats in Paradise Island. They are all people who are close to God." "God?" Su Zijuan sneered disdainfully. "How dare they call themselves God when they haven't even seen the dusk?" Jessica opened her mouth slightly. She still didn't know what kind of existence Su Zijuan was. She only knew that she was undoubtedly a race from Yiyan's country. That magical eastern country. But, let's put these clowns aside for the time being. I have something to do. Su Zijuan suddenly frowned. These guys have so many nests. I thought I could finish it before the new year. TSK. New Year? Jessica gave a start. She knew that people in China valued the new year very much. Yiyan would also prepare well every new year and send greetings and gifts to his friends and family in his hometown. Get ready. Su Zijuan pushed away Jessica's hand that was wiping her. You don't have to rush to take revenge. Anyway, you still have a long way to go. Su Zijuan stood up and thought to herself, that stupid butterfly should have woken up by now. I need to go back and take a look. Emperor? Luoqiu was surprised to hear some things from Long Shiru. It was a kind of chat in the White Mountain stream in order not to appear so silent and awkward. It was also some irrelevant information exchange about this incident. Of course, Luoqiu didn't tell her what he found in the ancestral house of the Song family. But Luoqiu knew the process of the birth of Wang from Long Shiru, so he solved some of the puzzles of the ancestor who was sleeping in the sarcophagus under the ancestral house of the Song family. At that time, he did feel that the soul sealed in the dead body was in a state of slowly dissipating, instead of being nourished and recovering little by little. Emperors all hope that they can live forever and rule their own country. But they don't know that there is no eternal dynasty in the world. Everything is just an illusion. Forcing them to stay will only throw the original order into chaos. Why, do you have any opinion? Long Shirua glanced at Luochio and found that he seemed to frown for a moment. Nothing, I agree with Miss Long's idea. Luochio smiled. You have been working hard to maintain the balance of all parties these years. Naturally, you have more experience than me. I can't accept this kind of flattery. Long Shirua responded indifferently. Luochio didn't say anything, but suddenly stopped and looked around. Long Shirua asked nervously, what happened? If even this man could stop, things might become a little troublesome. Long Shirua's current state was the most ordinary of children, so she couldn't judge the situation around her. A suppressive force has suddenly appeared. At this time, Luochio opened his palm, and a small light ball slowly floated out of his palm. But in an instant it disappeared above his palm. Then, another light ball emerged from Luochio's palm, but this time, the light ball didn't disappear, but maintained its original state. Well, about 6 times the output can maintain it. It's acceptable. Luochio waved his hand at this time, and the light ball disappeared again, but apparently, this time, it was caused by his own will. 6 times the output? Long Shirua frowned. How is the effect on you? There's basically no effect, Miss Long, don't worry. Luochio smiled. Long Shirua glanced at him strangely. Wasn't this man's drive too much? How could he have the same effect as normal when he had 6 times the power output? But why don't I feel anything? Long Shirua frowned. Stamina consumption is still within normal limits. Luochio thought about it for a while. It's probably just suppressing extraordinary power, but not normal people. Is that also caused by Wang's power? Long Shirua glanced at Luochio again, and mused to herself for a while before saying, Kelowna has 12 ancestral dragon veins, with Kunlun being the source of all the dragon veins in the world. The other 12 ancestral dragon veins each supported a dynasty's fate. One of them was the soaring dragon vein, which was later broken when the country fell. The broken soaring dragon vein scattered into the land of Kelowna, and it can only be restored with the nourishment of the land's spirit chi. The predecessor of Wang is a spirit vein formed by a portion of the soaring dragon's dragon vein that was scattered. Luochio nodded. So, it's your child, Miss Long, as the Shinryu of Kelowna, born from Kelowna's fate and the faith of Kelowna's people. The 12 ancestral dragon veins of Kelowna were, strictly speaking, Shinryu's children. Children, my ass. Long Shirua gritted her teeth. What's Wang's ability? Luochio directly skipped the debate. Long Shirua could only force herself to calm down and said reluctantly, it's mainly a spatial ability. As for the suppression you mentioned, it should be a new characteristic it gained from absorbing the spirit chi of the land nearby. I'm not sure if there's anything else. After all, it's still in the process of growth, so it's uncertain what kind of ability it will awaken. Well, I see. Luochio nodded, and then continued to hold Long Shirua's little hand and walked forward. I've found Long Shirua's location, let's go. Long Shirua suddenly pulled her hand out of Luochio's hand, and then under Luochio's surprised gaze, she reluctantly grasped the corner of his clothes. We won't get separated like this. That's true. Luochio nodded and said apologetically, I didn't think it through. Just holding the corner of his clothes. Long Shirua felt more and more awkward. But at least after finding Luo dance, it would be much better if she saw her being held like this. This guy, she still didn't know his intentions, so she had to be on guard. For Luo dance, the vast expanse of whiteness was really a difficult thing. In fact, she had tried to use her demon power according to Sister Long's method, but she didn't know why she always felt very clumsy and powerless. Maybe she was really too stupid? Luo dance knocked on her head slightly. But it was just a vast expanse of whiteness, and she couldn't see the road at all, nor could she find Sister Long, which made Luo Dance feel a little flustered. But even so, Luo Dance's mood soon turned better, because although it was a vast expanse of whiteness, the natural aura of the mountain stream was still very strong, which made her feel indescribably comfortable. Before she transformed, she had been living in the deep mountains and forests with her own wisdom. After 60 or 70 years, she had been accustomed to the aura of trees. Sister Long. Sister Long. Although she was somewhat intoxicated in the aura of nature, Luo Dance didn't forget to find Long Shiruo. After all, Long Shiruo's condition was not very good now. But suddenly Luo Dance stopped. Although she couldn't use her demon power to sense the surroundings, her 5 senses were different from ordinary people, so she still felt that there seemed to be something around her at this moment. Luo Dance suddenly turned around, only to feel that there seemed to be something swimming in the dense fog for a moment. Maybe it was just an illusion? But the feeling of being stared at in the dark didn't disappear. Instead, it became more and more intense. Luo Dance turned around several times, only to remember that long and narrow shadow swimming in the dense fog. This made her somewhat nervous, and put her hands in front of her chest. Excuse me, is there anyone here? Excuse me, is there anyone here, excuse me? She suddenly felt that there seemed to be an unusual airflow behind her, and at the same time there were some low voices, a kind of innate sense of awe, which made her feel stiff all over. Luo Dance turned her neck nervously, and her throat swayed a bit, and her heart beat wildly. Finally, when she turned her eyes back, she saw that there was a huge black shadow behind her. In this black shadow, there were 2 flashing red lights, like the eyes of something. Roar! Suddenly, a huge roar sounded in an instant, and at the same time, a huge wave suddenly rushed toward Luo Dance, blowing all her hair behind her back. Luo Dance only felt that her head was buzzing, and all her hearing disappeared under this roar, leaving only the ringing in her ears. Wow! She suddenly screamed, and then squatted on the ground with her head in her hands, trembling in horror. The 2 red lights in the dense fog were flashing at this time, as if they were blinking. Then, another huge roar sounded, and Luo Dance remembered that she was in great danger. She quickly got up, and ran straight to the road behind her without any direction. So terrible, so terrible, so terrible! Luo Dance felt that her heart was about to jump out, and some mist surged in the corner of her eyes again. She just kept running, fearing that the terrible thing behind her would catch up with her, but for a moment she seemed to bump into something. It was also a shadow, but it was just a shadow of a person's height. The moment she bumped into it, Luo Dance directly fell back. In a flash, she felt that her arm was pulled, and then she steadied herself. Dance! Behind the blurred shadow, Luo Dance heard the familiar voice of her sister Long. At this time, the little butterfly monster was pleasantly surprised, and immediately relaxed, taking deep breaths. But her movement seemed to be a little too big, and the moment she called out, Sister Long, after taking a deep breath, the buttons in front of her chest couldn't bear the torture of the pressure. Crack! Chapter 1009. When 2 buttons were broken, Luo Dance felt a sense of relief. She didn't feel anything but a comfortable feeling. Then she heard Sister Long's voice, and her anxious heart relaxed at once. The happiness of comfort and comfort overlapped with each other, becoming a double happiness. No, it should be a triple happiness, because she also saw the boss who had always been good to her. Wow! The little butterfly monster's face was filled with a happy smile, or perhaps she was a little excited. She clenched her hands in front of her chest like a fan who saw her idol. Her snow-white skin was squeezed into a beautiful 3-dimensional arc. But in the dense fog they weren't that clear. It was unknown who had formed the misty nights to protect their purity. Long Shiruo squinted at Luo Dance. She knew that Luo Dance didn't have any intuition, but she didn't care. If it was someone else. But the man here wouldn't be shaken by this. Long time no see. As Long Shiruo thought, Luochu first picked up the buttons on the ground and then took out a coat from his backpack. He said regretfully, It's not convenient to sew it for you now. Put it on first. Okay. Luo Dance nodded. What was going on with such a natural conversation that didn't seem to have any grudges or even awkwardness? Long Shiro was in a daze. It felt like something similar had happened before. Luo Dance quickly put on the coat given by Luochio. The coat was a little loose, but it covered the work of the foggy light nights well. But Luo Dance was still annoyed at this time. My breasts are getting bigger and bigger. I wanted to change the clothes myself, but I couldn't. The buttons have broken several times. Luochio was stunned and then couldn't help laughing. This guy could always make him laugh naturally from the bottom of his heart. Let Yi help you change the clothes next time? Luochio said softly. Okay. Luo Dance didn't think much and nodded directly. However, Long Shiro felt that something was wrong. Why did the conversation between the two of them sound like neighbors who had known each other for a long time? The muddle-headed little sister next door and the caring big brother next door? Now is not the time for idle chatter. Long Shiro couldn't help but cough twice to remind the two of them that the current situation wasn't just an occasional afternoon stroll. Sister Long, I was so worried about you. But Luo Dance knelt down on the ground and held Long Shiro in her arms. You suddenly disappeared. I was so afraid that I couldn't find you. She sounded like she was about to cry. Long Shiro instinctively wanted to comfort her, but her cheeks were suddenly pressed by a heavy pressure. A feeling of powerlessness made Long Shiro swallow back the words she was about to say. Luochio looked at Long Shiro's embarrassed appearance with interest. But such a large amount of pressure made Long Shiro want to find a hole to hide in. Come to think of it, I've always been rather calm, so why am I so easily irritated by all kinds of things recently? It's as if after losing my true dragon strength, my mood swings have become more and more intense. This state made Long Shiro suddenly feel a sense of confusion. Or was she really just an incomplete product? Since she got the inheritance of Shinryu, she got a lot of ancient knowledge in an instant. The power of Shinryu directly transformed her into a life form of another level and directly skipped several years. She grew up and stayed there after she grew up. Did something terrible happen to you? But Luochio knew when to stop. He seemed to have grasped the critical point of Long Shiro's outbreak, so he asked the question timely. Luo Dance let go of Long Shiro, and then briefly told what happened after she got separated from Long Shiro. Although she said it simply, that nervous expression appeared once again. She clenched her small fists and nervously held them in front of her chest. She raised her head and widened her round eyes. It's really very scary. Big red eyes. I almost thought I was going to be eaten. It should be Wang. Long Shiro frowned at this time with a dignified expression. That black shadow. I'm afraid that the seal is not as simple as just loosening, but has been broken. If it is released, will it be troublesome? Luochio suddenly asked. Long Shiro said angrily at this time, of course. It still can't control its ability well, and its spiritual intelligence is not high. You also have eyes, don't you? The area covered by the fog was already somewhat chaotic. If it covered a larger area, even the country would have a hard time explaining it. When a supernatural phenomenon exceeded a certain threshold, no matter how ignorant the world was, it was impossible to simply cover it up. How much effort did we spend to modify history to this extent? For thousands of years, or even longer, those abnormal, strange, and unnatural forces were hidden in the past history, making society the society it was today. Science was prosperous, but it was very likely that it would be destroyed because of this. This could not be all the credit of the transcendence outside the Tao world, the demon world, and even the land of Kelowna. There might be a kind of vast power behind this that could control and make all the transcendents have a common understanding. For a moment, Luochio thought of what happened in the mirror world not long ago. Was it Araya? However, if it was really like what Long Shiro said, it would cause a huge mess in the present history. Luocio did not feel that Araya had any intention of making a move. In other words, it was a tacit agreement. Or it was a planned development that was allowed. Hey, are you listening? When Long Shirua saw that Luocio seemed to be a little distracted, she could not help but frown. Sorry, I thought of something. Luocio came back to his senses and asked curiously, Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with? If this was really allowed by Alea, or if it was something that had been planned. He wondered how Alea would react after he made his move. Or he could once again verify the so-called root authority, whether he could really do whatever he wanted to Araya. Well, to be precise, even if he could rewrite the history, he could still make her not resist unconditionally. Araya in 003 was just a sub-administrator, then the will of the higher-level administrator that the sub-administrator obeyed. Help me find the place where Wang is sealed. Long Shirua gritted her teeth and suddenly said, If the seal was not destroyed by external forces, it should be possible to repair it. As long as it is sealed again, then things will be much simpler. Then let's go. Luocio nodded and then waved his hand. A gentle whirlwind naturally rolled up around him, sucking away the mist around and creating a clear environment. I heard it's a pool. Then it should be here. Long Shirua suddenly moved her lips, suddenly inexplicably angry. Why didn't he create such an environment in the beginning? Because now I suddenly found a reason to waste time. Luocio blinked. I really want to beat this guy's face into a pig's head? In a quiet courtyard, Mr. Blind and 100 Tribulation Taoist were sitting face to face. As a senior, 100 Tribulation Taoist should be received by Mr. Blind. Besides, 100 Tribulation Taoist was also a guest. Time flies so fast, dozens of years have passed in the blink of an eye. 100 Tribulation Taoist chuckled. I thought I wouldn't see you come back in 100 years, but you came back so fast. Mr. Blind was silent for a while, then suddenly said, My senior brother left me a message, asking me to come back. Heavenly Heart 71? 100 Tribulation Taoist slightly opened his eyes in surprise. Heavenly Heart was the name of the only successor of each generation of the Linen sect, and generation was a crown after Heavenly Heart to distinguish each successor. Strictly speaking, Lai Kaixing should be called Heavenly Heart 72 or simply 72 generation. But when I came here, I couldn't figure out the whereabouts of my senior brother. Mr. Blind sighed. 100 Tribulation Taoist took a sip of the freshly brewed tea, and was silent for a while. 71 generation, why did he ask you to come back? Mr. Blind was also silent at this moment. After a long while, he spat out 2 words, Dragon Vein. 100 Tribulation Taoist opened his eyes and looked at Mr. Blind for a while, then said, A long time ago, there was a brilliant genius in the Linen sect. Although this person hasn't officially become the successor of the current generation, in everyone's eyes, he's already the new Heavenly Heart 71. But he was too arrogant and looked down on everyone. 100 Tribulation Taoist said indifferently, This person thought he had mastered the essence of the Linen sect, so he became even more arrogant. This person tried to gather the power of the spirit veins of Mount Tai and connect with the origin of the 12 dragon veins of Kelowna. He wanted to use the fate of the world to open the Penglai door that had disappeared for a long time. However, when he reached the final moment, he was unable to control the power of providence of the world, resulting in an irreversible situation. In order to save all of this, his master, the 70th generation, had sacrificed his own life, and in the end quelled a calamity. From then on, this prideful disciple willingly became an abandoned disciple, giving up on inheriting the mantle of the linen clothes path. Many years passed, and another disciple took over the linen clothes path of great sin, becoming the 71st generation, and even nurturing an incomparably outstanding successor. And now you're telling me that the 71 generation suddenly started to look for the dragon vein again during the Penglai conference. Wasn't the lesson from that year enough? I couldn't figure out the whereabouts of my senior brother. Mr. Blind took a deep breath. Just now I had a conversation with Lai Kai-shing. Judging from what he said, he doesn't seem to know the whereabouts of the 71st generation, nor does he know the plans of the 71st generation. Ha! That rascal! 100 Tribulations Taoist put down his teacup and then hammered his shoulder. The linen sect is really not easy to deal with. This makes it so that I can't find the time to die even if I want to. Qing Xiazi is a sinner. Mr. Blind sighed and said, The Tao world let me go back then, so I didn't have the face to continue staying in Kelowna. I left my hometown and tried my best to avoid contact with the people of the Tao world. If senior brother hadn't left a message here that broke my heart, Qing Xiazi wouldn't have the face to come to the Crouching Dragon Mountain Villa again, let alone see you. Have you told Lai Kai-shing about this? 100 Tribulations Taoist suddenly asked. Mr. Blind shook his head. He did ask me about this, but I evaded him vaguely. However, given this kid's ability, he probably has some ideas in his heart. In the future, he might be able to deduce some clues through the signs. You have a high opinion of that rascal. He's indeed more outstanding than I was back then. Mr. Blind sighed. Yes. 100 Tribulations Taoist nodded. He's so outstanding that I feel like I've seen Qing Xiazi back then. Yes, now I understand that I'll ask people to pay more attention to the whereabouts of the 71st generation. However, I'm afraid it's difficult for the linen sect to hide. I'll fast and bathe these 2 days. At the moment of the new year, I'll take advantage of the moment when the old and the new change to see if I can peek into a trace of the heavenly mystery. Then I'll leave it to you. 100 Tribulations Taoist nodded. There were a few dishes and beer from Tsingtao, of course. The temperature in the small restaurant was adjusted to allow people to take off their coats and wear only small pieces of clothing. It was so noisy in the small restaurant that Momo felt that he might have misheard. Just a few minutes ago, this white-haired girl called Nero directly told him some rules of doing business with the club. Momo had heard about the legend of this mysterious place from his master, Long River Taoist. He only knew that it suddenly appeared in Kelowna about 100 years ago. But until now, Momo still couldn't connect this mysterious place with the store that made him feel warm. Nero put a salted peanut into her mouth with chopsticks and chewed slowly. At this moment, she pushed out a small box and opened it in front of Momo. The moment she opened it, Momo was shocked by those small light balls that looked like jewels. No doubt, these small light balls that were as beautiful as luminous pearls were souls one after another. This small box wasn't big, but there were no less than 30 light balls inside, if each of them represented a life. For customers, this is a very valuable purchase coin. Nero chuckled. All of a sudden, Momo felt a chill. Chapter 10:10. Celestial Masters of Mount Longhu were able to communicate with Yin and Yang. Celestial Masters had first appeared to sweep away the demons and monsters of the human world. Sensing the state of one's soul could be said to be a form of entry-level cultivation for Celestial Masters. Inside the box, there were dozens of souls that were constantly emitting an aura of hatred and despair. They were probably lamenting the fact that after their lives had been harvested, they would still be imprisoned in this small box. Momo lowered his head, saying in a low voice, I don't know what a purchase coin is, but is it okay for you to do this? Nero, who was gulping down a large mug of draft beer, looked at Momo from the side of the mug while maintaining the drinking posture. Trampling on these lives in order to get something. Are you treating them as trading goods? Momo's voice became deeper. Nero blinked, put down the big cup in her hand, and asked curiously, I say, little brother, are you the righteous type? That's boring. I'm not the one who set the rules, I just follow the rules. Besides, I earn the money with my own ability, why can't I spend it? Are you kidding me? The table suddenly made a sound. That was the effect of Momo's hands slapping on the table. He stood up abruptly and stared at the indifferent white-haired girl from top to bottom. Do you know how important life is? How can you do whatever you want? Oh, you're really this type of person. Nero waved her hand. It seems we don't have a chance to team up. Let's go our separate ways after this meal. By the way, little brother, don't you think you're disturbing others? The diners in the small restaurant were all looking over at this moment. Momo furiously stretched out his hand to grab the box full of souls. Don't move, Nero said coldly. At this moment, Momo felt like he was being stared at by countless evil spirits. The surroundings were filled with killing intent, which made his body stiffen instinctively. He subconsciously looked at this white-haired girl. This wasn't a look that a human should have. You want to save these souls? Nero said indifferently. Sure, but you'd better be prepared to be cut. I'm not that easy to talk to. I still stand by my words. Nero took back the box at this time. I'm just following the rules. I will only do so if the rules allow it. If you have any dissatisfaction, you can look for the person who made the rules. That enormous killing intent didn't disappear at all. Under Nero's gaze, Momo only felt more and more pressure. It even exceeded the normal state of facing the White Tiger's young master, Huang Baifu. Forget it. At this time, Nero stretched herself, and the murderous intent in the air disappeared instantly. She stood up and put the painting tube on her back. Anyway, it doesn't matter if I'm alone. When Nero turned around and left, Momo sat down and lowered his head. He subconsciously grabbed the handle of the black wooden sword leaning on the table, but found that even though he had already grasped the handle of the wooden sword, his fingers still had a kind of unsteady feeling. His strength, his method, had not yet recovered. Oh, I almost forgot. But Nero's voice sounded in front of him again at this time, which made Momo suddenly raise his head, tensing up his body nervously. Nero just reached out and took a skewer of barbecue on the table, smiling and saying, "Thank you for your treat. Righteous little brother, bye-bye," she left calmly like this. The small restaurant was noisy again, but Momo's mind was full of one thing: the person who made the rules. The person who made the rules. The person who made the rules. Was this the rule made by the senior? Using human souls as the currency of the transaction. Senior, what are you? After leaving the small restaurant, Nero looked around the street and muttered while biting the kebab, "Righteous little brother. Probably the boss likes this kind of so-called noble character very much." When they walked through an alley, a stray dog poked its head out and stared at Nero pitifully, or rather, at the barbecue in her hand. Nero also stared at this pitiful dog, eating the food in her hand one by one, and finally threw the remaining barbecue on the ground, but the dog just looked at it, hesitating to move forward. Nero smiled. "You don't even have the courage to fight for the abandoned leftovers. I say, you'd better die." The dog didn't move forward in the end, it just bared its teeth and retreated into the alley little by little. Nero didn't continue to stay, her fingers hooked behind her back, walking briskly, humming a song and gradually disappearing into the crowded street. She was alone. It seemed that she always encountered that kind of unexpected and inexplicable things recently. Song Ying thought so. She remembered that not long ago, she had already been lost in the thick fog. That incident at the fallen cliff could be said to be a narrow escape. Song Ying felt that her nerves had already been trained to be very tough. She had even seen zombies, so there was nothing to be afraid of. But in fact, she was indeed a little scared now. In the thick fog, there was moisture everywhere, but in this cold season, it was not a good thing. If she had known that the jacket was coming, Song Ying would have huffed on her hands. Speaking of which, the thick fog came suddenly, and whether it was Song Haoren, Luoqiu, or even Zhang Qingrui, they all disappeared suddenly. But obviously, this was not a dream. The child of the dragon god, the legend hidden in the mountain village where the Song family's ancestral house was located. This couldn't be true, right? Thinking so, Song Ying took out her mobile phone, but found that there was no signal at all. She couldn't help but take back her mobile phone, discouraged. At least one person. Song Ying slowly explored in one direction, thinking that it would be good to meet at least one person. Even if she met Miss Zhang, it would be better than the current situation. Maybe she should stay where she was? But now, he had already lost the direction that he had set off in. Song Ying had to hold a stick-like branch, picked up from the ground, tightly and moved forward cautiously. Suddenly, a strange sound rang in Song Ying's ears. This made her stop abruptly, and her hands clenched the thick and long branch again, while her eyeballs moved slowly from side to side. She didn't even dare to move her head, because at this moment, Song Ying felt that something seemed to appear beside her shoulder. Her body trembled slightly, and she slowly turned her neck. Finally, she saw something, and it seemed to be slowly moving its neck over like her. Finally, when her eyes met with the two red lights, a hot breath directly erupted on her face, directly blowing her long hair into a mess. Ah! She didn't want to run away. At this moment, Song Ying didn't know where the courage came from, but at this moment, she swung the branch in her hand and fiercely hit the two red lights in front of her, a black shadow that she couldn't see clearly. The thick and long branch hit something firmly, and Song Ying really felt that kind of feeling, but at the same time, the branch also broke in an instant. Undoubtedly, such an attack obviously didn't have any effect. The two red lights suddenly flashed, and at the same time, a loud roar rang out. The huge thing in the fog was emitting something that made Song Ying tremble. Run! Countless thoughts of running away burst out in Song Ying's mind at the same time, and they gathered into the power of fear, driving Song Ying to quickly run back with a pale face. But only for a moment. Song Ying felt that her body suddenly became relaxed, as if she had lost all gravity in an instant. No, her body was falling down at this moment, but she didn't know what she was stepping on in the air. This state of weightlessness instantly maximized Song Ying's fear, and at the same time, it made her mind jump crazily. Perhaps it could become a state of carousel lantern. If you are going to die, then who do you want to see the most? Suddenly, such a question emerged in Song Ying's memory. This was the question she asked Luoqiu when she and Luoqiu were trapped in the cold storage and almost froze to death. Several figures suddenly flashed in front of Song Ying's eyes. If it wasn't so dishonest, then it would be fine. But something suddenly entangled Song Ying's body at this moment. Song Ying felt that she was tightly strangled, but at the same time, it slowed down her falling speed. Before she could react, she felt her body colliding with the ground. Fortunately, due to the cushioning effect, she only felt pain after taking this hit, and did not suffer any fractures. Song Ying lay on the ground and rested for a long time before she had the strength to move her body. She should have been saved by some vine-like things when she fell. She was really lucky. She couldn't remember how many times she had been saved from the jaws of death. Sometimes, Song Ying didn't know whether it was her luck or her misfortune. She began to look at the place where she fell. It seemed to be a place like a deep pit or a crypt, but it was not a magical thing to have such a geographical environment in the deep mountains and forests. Song Ying already felt that she was extremely lucky that she didn't fall off a cliff. But at this moment, she heard a sound. It seemed that something was approaching her in the darkness. This made Song Ying's pores open because of nervousness. Who is here? Song Ying quickly got up, and at the same time, she grasped the broken half of the branch tightly, and without saying anything, she struck forward. Miss Song. Suddenly, Song Ying heard a voice that she recognized. But it was too late, and the branch was knocked down heavily. Song Ying didn't know where she hit, but only heard a painful groan and then the sound of someone falling to the ground. Song Ying hurriedly took out her phone and turned on the flashlight. At this moment, the person who fell on the ground, looking a little embarrassed and frightened, was Zhang Qingrui, the young lady of the Zhang family who accompanied her all the way. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Song Ying hurriedly threw away the broken branch in her hand. Miss Song Ying, can you pull me up first? I seem to have sprained my ankle when I fell. Zhang Qingrui gritted her teeth and said painfully. Speaking of which, the young lady of the Zhang family was really miserable. According to her words, she seemed to have been separated suddenly, and in the process of looking for others, she seemed to have bumped into something, and in a panic, she fell into this deep pit. But Zhang Qingrui wasn't as lucky as Song Ying. She sprained her ankle when she fell, and she was hit by Song Ying's stick. The place where she was hit was the elbow, and it might have hurt the bone. Seeing that Zhang Qingrui couldn't raise her right hand, and her face was full of pain, Song Ying had to ask awkwardly, "Are you afraid of pain?" "It should be fine," Zhang Qingrui said in a low voice. At this moment, Song Ying touched her calf with both hands, which surprised Zhang Qingrui. Song Ying moved to the front of Zhang Qingrui and pressed her ankle gently, looking up at her. "Well, it's okay. It might be painful later, but just bear with it for a while. Once it's over, you'll feel better. Trust me." "Okay." Zhang Qingrui grasped her collar nervously. "I'm going to start." Song Ying took a deep breath, and then exerted her strength instantly. Instantly, Zhang Qingrui let out a whine, but she pressed her lips tightly, trying not to make any sound. The pain in that instant made her want to cry. But after the pain was over, the soothing feeling coming from the injured area made her feel much better. "Miss Song Ying, you're so awesome." Zhang Qingrui looked at her with admiration. If she was in Song Ying's shoes, she wouldn't be able to deal with it. "It's okay. Anyway, someone said I'm a tough woman. If I don't understand, it'll be abnormal, right?" Song Ying said while gnashing her teeth, and then glanced at Zhang Qingrui. Zhang Qingrui chuckled with her lips closed. Song Ying was stunned for a while. "If I were a man, I would probably be captivated by such a sweet smile, right? Knowledgeable, talented, gentle, quiet, generous and smart, these were all qualities that men liked." "You like Luo Qiu?" Lost in thought, Song Ying blurted out this question. Zhang Qingrui didn't know how to react, and opened her mouth slightly. They looked at each other. Zhang Qingrui suddenly said blankly, "Doesn't he have a girlfriend?" Song Ying shook her head as if she was bored. "Don't call me Mississippi. Let's get to know each other again. I'm Song Ying, just call me Song Ying." Zhang Qingrui.